Chapter 1621. After deciding to leave, Noah did not immediately return to the world between worlds. Instead, he stayed in the box court for 3 days. The 3 days were mainly to transfer the affairs of the Stratum ruler to Letitia and announce it to the entire East District. After all, after Noah left this world, a month would have passed in this world. A month's time was neither too long nor too short. However, if the entire East District lost the Stratum ruler for a month, it would be a complete mess. If the matter of Letitia taking over the Stratum ruler's affairs was not announced, it would cause a lot of trouble for Letitia when she was in power. Thus, the necessary things had to be done and could not be omitted. Fortunately, Letitia used to be the royal family of the vampire clan that protected the order of the entire box court. She had also held the position of Stratum ruler with full power, so she was not unfamiliar with the position of Stratum ruler. Otherwise, in just 3 days it would be really difficult to transfer all the affairs to Letitia. No matter what, the matter of transferring was done smoothly. As for the matter of Letitia taking over the Stratum ruler's affairs, no one had any objections. Firstly, Letitia was indeed not unfamiliar with the position of Stratum ruler. Secondly, even without considering the issue of profession compatibility, Letitia herself had a 4-digit battle power. It was enough to protect the East District of the box court. At the very least, Letitia still had the sun sovereignty of Ophiuchus constellation. Once she used the sun sovereignty of Ophiuchus constellation, then unless it was a 3-digit battle power, there would not be a single 4-digit battle power that could guarantee that they could defeat Letitia. Moreover, Letitia also had the support of Pest, who was also in the 4 digits. Noah had also contacted Jiao Lu and Jiao Ling, asking the 2 monster kings to lend a hand when necessary. No matter what, it was impossible for the Eastern District to fall into enemy hands in a short month. After doing all this, Noah finally felt relieved and made a decision. The next day he left the box court. Unfortunately, this decision on the second day was directly inserted into an episode that could not be ignored. In the headquarters of No Name, Noah was holding a letter in his hand. He looked like he had just swallowed a fly. He had a bitter expression on his face. Normally, if there weren't any important activities, the members of the community would gather in this room at this time to improve their relationship and decide the content of the day's activities. But today, when Noah came here, he didn't see a single person. He only found this letter on the table. The contents of the letter were as follows. Your companions in the community are being held hostage by us. If you want to save them, come here. On the letter, other than this sentence, there was a map drawn everywhere else. Noah easily recognized it. It was the map of No Name's base. At the corner of the map there was an arrow. That was the place the kidnapper wanted to go to, right? Holding the letter, Noah stared blankly for a long time. After a long time he squeezed out a sentence. What the hell? Don't blame Noah for not feeling nervous. It was just that this letter was a little strange. If he thought about it carefully, he would understand. First of all, why would the other party know the detailed terrain of No Name's base and draw it out? Secondly, why would the kidnapper want to negotiate in No Name's territory? Lastly, if this letter was real, why did Noah not feel anything out of the ordinary? The No Name of today was no longer the No Name of the past. Any random 7-digit tiger man could kidnap a bunch of people. Putting aside the fact that Letitia and Pest were both 4-digit existences, 16 Knights, Flying Bird, Radiance and Black Rabbit were also not easy to deal with. Who would have the ability to kidnap these people without causing any commotion? At least from Noah's point of view, unless it was someone like the Queen of All Saints who could control realms, and someone with at least a 3-digit number, only then would they have the ability to do this. Otherwise, even if it was an extremely secretive gift or the organizer's authority, it would still be impossible to do this without Noah noticing. Thinking about it this way, Noah could roughly guess who the kidnapper was. Those problematic children. Noah had a headache as he crushed the letter in his hand. Then, with a bitter expression, he turned around and walked out of the meeting room. Whoosh! A light breeze blew through the entire No Name's base, causing the rice in the farmland to sway like a young girl with her hair. At a glance, the entire vast land was evenly divided into pieces and crops were planted there. The scene that entered one's eyes were fields full of vitality. No one would be willing to believe it, right? Just 2 months ago, the land here was a lifeless wilderness. It was simply like a ruin unbearable to look at. After a period of reclamation and development, the land belonging to No Name had recovered its vitality. Although it would still take some time to recover to the same level of prosperity as 3 years ago, looking at the fields full of vitality, no one would think that it was impossible. Noah walked among the fields, following the map drawn on the letter, and walked forward. Not long after, Noah arrived at the edge of No Name's base. There was still no time to develop this place. Therefore, unlike the fields that were full of vitality, the nearby land was still as deserted as before. Noah walked into this deserted area and immediately saw it. In front of him, 3 young boys and girls were standing side by side in a row. They put on an impressive posture and looked in the direction of Noah. "Yo!" 16th Night revealed an insufferably arrogant smile. "You're finally here?" Although there's no time attached, it's not a good habit to make a virtuous girl wait. Flying Bird stretched out her hand and brushed her long hair. "If you still didn't come, we were going to kill the hostages." "Kill the hostages?" Yao blinked his eyes, as if he didn't know there was such a setting. Soon after, he reacted and nodded with a solemn expression. "That's right, we're going to kill the hostages." Seeing the 3 problematic children speaking with an evil tone, as if they had discussed this from the very beginning, the corners of Noah's eyes twitched. Especially when he saw the 3 problematic children, Noah became even more speechless. Beside the 3 problem children were Letitia, Pest and Ran. The 3 of them had their backs against each other. They were tied together by a rope. "I'm sorry, Master." Letitia lowered her head as if she was too ashamed to see anyone. "I never thought that these problematic children would actually do such a thing. Who would have thought that our companions in the community would suddenly launch a sneak attack and knock us unconscious?" Pest was furious. "Furthermore, exactly what is going on with this rope? Why are we unable to break free from it?" "That's a tool capable of nullifying a bestowment," Rin explained helplessly. "Furthermore, it's a reward given to me by Lord White Yuksha after Mr. Noah won against him yesterday." In other words, the 3 problematic children had used the spoils of war that Noah had won to carry out this kidnapping plan. Of course, Letitia, Pest and Ren's condition could still be considered good. What truly caused Noah to ridicule them was the fact that there was another person tied up before the 3 of them. "Woo-woo-woo." Black Rabbit was sobbing as tears flowed down from his eyes. It wasn't that Black Rabbit didn't want to speak. Rather, there was a piece of rag stuffed into his mouth. His entire body was tied up like a rice dumpling. Like a caterpillar, he was struggling non-stop on the ground. Seeing this scene, Noah covered his face. At this moment, Noah was even able to understand the sorrowful cries in Black Rabbit's heart. "Why must you treat me like this?" Black Rabbit's tear-streaked face was all telling this sentence. Chapter 16:22. In the air, an indescribable atmosphere was spreading. That atmosphere, if one were to say it was heavy, then it was somewhat comical. If one were to say it was comical, then there were some parts that were hard to agree with. It could only be said that it was very subtle. Noah could only look at the 3 problem children, 16 Knights, Flying Bird, and Yao, who were acting like villains. After holding back for a long time, he pointed at Black Rabbit, who was tied up like a big dumpling, and squeezed out such a sentence. "Speaking of which, why do you treat Black Rabbit differently?" As if the words in her heart were spoken, Black Rabbit with tears in her eyes kept nodding her head. However, 16th Night, Fei Niao, and Yao seemed to be surprised. They first glanced at the Black Rabbit that was rolling on the ground like a caterpillar before exchanging glances with each other. In the end, they looked at Noah in unison. Because it's fun? Because it's easy to use? Because it's easy to bully? The 3 uncertain answers made the corner of Noah's mouth twitch fiercely. Black Rabbit was stunned as if it had been hit by a stick. After a while, tears flowed down its face with a crashing sound. Obviously, 16 Knights, Flying Bird, and Yao only subconsciously bullied Black Rabbit, and didn't think that they had done something that treated her differently. Poor Black Rabbit. Undoubtedly, as a young girl, she was very charming in all aspects, but she became the pastime of these 3 problem children. No wonder even Jiaoling, who met Black Rabbit for the first time, said that she was a toy of Buddhism and Sakra. The atmosphere of remnant thoughts was probably like a curse that surrounded Black Rabbit's body. "Forget it, if I care about the details I feel like I've lost." Noah forced himself to accept this situation and questioned the three problem children. Then please tell me, what is the purpose of doing this? Noah's words made the three problem children raise their eyebrows. I say, little brother, do you really not understand, or are you pretending not to understand? A frivolous smile appeared on 16 Knight's face. Like a delinquent, he raised his fingers. We are doing this, of course, to repay our previous debt. Previous debt. Noah's face was full of innocence. What debt do I owe you? Don't tell me you forgot, Noah. Fei Niao pointed at Noah and shouted loudly. No matter if it's me, Sagakuki-san, or Sagakuki-san, we've all been taught a lesson by you. Noah was really confused. 16 Knights could still be counted as fixing, but since when did Noah fix Flying Bird and Yao? Wasn't this framing him? As a result, Yao seemed to have seen through Noah's doubts and puffed up his cheeks. Have you forgotten? How did you treat me and Fei Niao during the fire dragon's birth ceremony? After being reminded by Yao, Noah finally remembered. Back then, during the fire dragon's birth ceremony, Noah had indeed briefly fought with Fei Niao and Yao. Have you finally remembered? Fei Niao teased. At that time you even spanked Haruai classmates' butt. With one sentence, the already subtle atmosphere in the air directly became awkward. Fei Niao. Yao's face was slightly red as he puffed up his cheeks and kept hitting Fei Niao's back with his small fists. So painful. Okay. I won't say anymore. Stop hitting me. Fei Niao quickly dodged Yao's small fists as if she really felt the pain. After all, Fei Niao's body was just an ordinary girl. Even if it was just a light hit, it would still hurt. Now, do you know what's going on? 16 Knights ignored Fei Niao and Yao's quarrel and grinned at Noah. We're here to repay the debt you owe us. So you're saying that you kidnapped me just to challenge me? Noah was really puzzled. If that's the case, can't you just tell me directly? After hearing Noah's words, 16 Knights, Fei Niao, and Yao said in unison. No, that's not interesting at all. Noah almost couldn't catch his breath in time. At this moment, Noah felt incomparably stifled. Even Noah was in such a state. He was reduced to three problematic children who had only been attacked because of the interesting angle. Letitia, Pest, Ran and Black Rabbit were all tied up and had their hands tied behind their backs. Needless to say, Letitia, Pest, Ran and Black Rabbit were all extremely sullen. All in all, that's it. Fei Niao coughed and pretended to say, Noah, if you want to save your people, then you have to accept our challenge. Then let me ask first. Noah let out a big sigh and said bluntly, you can't be thinking that the three of you can win against me just by joining hands, right? Ugh. Yao immediately muttered. How arrogant. It wasn't just Yao. Even 16 Knights and Fei Niao also wanted to vent their anger, but couldn't refute. That was only natural. In terms of combat strength, even if the three problem children were all tied up together, they still wouldn't be able to win against Noah. It wasn't that 16 Knights, Fei Niao and Yao were too weak. It was just that Noah broke the rules too much. 16 Knights. The truth is unknown. Possessed two abilities that were outside of the norm. The gift of shattering heaven and earth, and the power of shattering gift. Her combat power was ranked in the 4 digits. Even though she was not as strong as Letitia, she was on par with Pest. Fei Niao's light of might could bestow a simulated godhead to the target, raising the target's spirit lattice to the maximum. As long as he had enough blessings, the combat strength he could unleash would not be below 16 Knights. Yao's life catalog could even obtain the spirit lattice of all beasts. He could obtain the blessings of wild beasts, illusion beasts and even divine beasts. If he used it well, he could practically possess the abilities of all beasts. These 3 blessings were all considered by Black Rabbit to be the highest level of human existence. One could imagine how high the potential of these 3 blessings were. And in the successive battles against absolute evil and closed world, the potential of Fei Niao and Yao had already begun to sprout. In order to ensure that Fei Niao's blessings could fully unleash its potential, during the expedition against closed world, as an ally, Will-O-Wisp helped Fei Niao create several high-level blessings, raising Fei Niao's combat strength by several levels in one go. The true value of Yao's life catalog was also unearthed. Noah also only found out about it not long ago. In fact, the true effect of Yao's life catalog was that he could collect information from all life forms. He could take samples from the system tree's catalog, and then proceed with evolution and synthesis, imitating the power of all life forms. These blessings could even imitate the power of the strongest species, and turn the imitated power into a weapon to carry out a higher level of application. As long as he had these blessings, no matter how unreasonable the game was, the user would be able to respond to all situations and obtain the corresponding blessings. After knowing the true ability of the life catalog, Noah immediately thought of something. Gate of Babylon. Yao's life catalog was simply another type of Gate of Babylon. However, when Yao used more blessings than the total amount of spirit stored in the life catalog, in order to protect the user, the blessings would temporarily stop functioning. And if he imitated the power of the strongest species, not only could he only use it for a short period of time, in the following period of time, Yao's life catalog would also lose its effect. It would not be until a month later that the spirit would be completely restored. To put it bluntly, today, the three problem children all had 4-digit levels of power. But even so, it was still impossible to beat Noah. The three problem children naturally felt unreconciled, but it was not to the point of not admitting it. So, in order to make our revenge meaningful, you should accept our game. Accompanied by the declaration of the three problem children, a contract flashed in the air and floated down, falling into Noah's hands. Gift game name: alternating attack and defense revenge match. Only victory condition. Hit the opponent's body. Only defeat condition. When the contestant is unable to achieve the above victory conditions. First game rule: alternating attack and defense. The opponent reduced to the defensive side can only dodge and cannot attack. Second game rule: every 3 minutes, alternating attack and defense will take place. After 3 minutes, the attacking side and the defending side will exchange. Third game rule: all contestants will be divided into 2 camps, black and white. Alternating attack and defense will take place between the 2 camps. Contestants of the same camp will share victory and defeat conditions. If one person wins or loses, the group wins or loses. Fourth game rule: in the first 3 minutes, the attacking side must be the side with more people. Black camp contestant: Noah Doria. White camp contestant: 16 Knights Reversal Jiuan Fei Niao, Kasuga Hikari, Oath. Respect the above content, based on glory and flag, and the name of the organizer, host the gift game. No. W. What? Looking at the contract in his hand, Noah could not help but let out a shocked voice. Bang! At this moment, along with the sound of an explosion, a figure shot toward Noah's direction. Chapter 1623. Bang! 16 Knights figure turned into a rocket accompanied by the sound of the ground exploding. With the terrifying speed known as the Third Universe's speed, he instantly shot towards Noah and flashed in front of Noah. The game has begun. Bro. Stop daydreaming. With an arrogant laugh, 16th Knight raised a fist, and with a sonic boom in the air, he threw a punch at Noah's chest. 16 Knights didn't hold back at all in this punch. His fist, which was strong enough to shatter mountains and rivers, was blasted towards Noah's chest with a shocking explosion. Undoubtedly, the winning condition was to hit the opponent's body, but 16 Knights used all of his strength in this fight. Obviously, 16 Knights clearly knew that if he held back, he wouldn't be able to win in this game where he had the advantage. It was this awareness that made Noah subconsciously enter battle mode. However, at that moment Noah, who was on the defensive, was simply unable to attack at all. He could only dodge. Facing 16 Knights' earth-shattering punch, Noah's methods were already on the verge of being revealed. Fear those with wings. Both the evil and the powerful fear me because of my wings. My wings will bring you a curse, the evil cannot hit me. In the depths of Noah's heart, the stone plate with 10 patterns on its outline suddenly turned and pointed to the phoenix. In the next instant, Noah's entire body transformed into a mirage-like phantom. Along with a string of light and shadow, he disappeared on the spot. Bang! The fist, which was strong enough to shatter mountains and rivers and split the sea, exploded the afterimage Noah had left behind. The afterimage was like a piece of glass, and it burst apart. This scene didn't surprise 16 Knights. Instead, it made 16 Knights reveal an expression of as expected, and he shouted, Kasuga tribe. Yao, who was waiting in place, immediately reached out his hand and tightly grasped the pendant hanging in front of him. Vital catalog. Shape Makijas. The life catalog on Yao's neck suddenly blossomed with a bright light. Under the light, the round wooden sculpture slowly twisted and turned into a dazzling radiance, covering Yao's feet. When the light faded away, a pair of steel boots appeared on Yao's feet. It was a pair of combat boots with tips as sharp as the claws of ferocious beasts and decorations that resembled the feathers of griffins. Clang! The boots landed on the ground, producing a powerful sound of metal clashing. Yao, who was wearing a pair of ferocious war boots, slowly closed his eyes. After a while, Yao suddenly opened his eyes, turned his head, and looked in a certain direction. Over there. As soon as he finished speaking, Yao spun around and launched a roundhouse kick in the air. As Yao spun around, a black flame burst out from the pair of terrifying boots under his feet. Under Yao's roundhouse kick, it turned into a fire wheel, whistling through the space. With a chi sound, it shot forward while spinning. Almost at the same time, Noah's figure appeared out of thin air. The place where he appeared was the direction where the black fire wheel came from. The terrible heat rushed towards Noah's body. Noah hurriedly stomped on the ground, shattering it. At the same time, he retreated like a bullet fired from a gun. Bang! The black fire wheel suddenly fell on Noah's previous position, and the ground that was crushed by Noah exploded, setting off a scorching fire and a strong shock wave blowing in all directions. In the storm, Noah's figure rushed out, and even a wisp of smoke came out from his body. He landed on the edge of the fire and was speechless. So that's how it is. Did you predict my position? Makijas. He was the 35th demon god of Solomon's 72 demon god pillars, a marquis who commanded 30 legions and a powerful warrior. However, Makijas was not a demon, but a phantasmal beast. Moreover, he was known as the third fantasy breed. He looked like a wolf, but at the same time, he had the wings of a griffin and the tail of a snake. By changing the shape of the life catalog and turning it into a weapon, Yao obtained the gift of the third fantasy breed named Makijas. There were two kinds of gifts from Makijas. One was a demonic flame comparable to the flames of hell. The other was the ability to foresee the future a few seconds later. Wearing the pair of boots, Yao predicted Noah's position a few seconds later and released an attack there. Therefore, Noah, who entered the world of Godspeed, was directly forced to exit the Godspeed state, which allowed him to narrowly avoid Yao's attack. Just like how you know about our grace ability, we also know about your authority ability. Looking at Noah's speechless expression, Yao proudly puffed out his chest. Your seraphic speed authority doesn't increase speed, nor does it shorten distance. Instead, it shortens the time needed to move by manipulating time. It's like a space jump. It's a very high-level ability. However, if I can predict your position, then it won't be a problem. If Noah could attack, relying on the ability of the Phoenix to shorten the time needed to move, Noah could win with a terrifying speed that no one could react to. Unfortunately, Noah was now on the defensive side and could not attack at all. He could only rely on his god speed to move. In that case, Dazzling Maxias would be able to predict Noah's location and calmly launch an attack. If Noah could attack, we might have lost immediately. However, Noah is now on the defensive side. For the next 3 minutes, it's completely our home ground. Yao made a declaration in high spirits, which was rare for him to do. Within 3 minutes, we will hit you and win. In other words, if the 3 problem children could not win in 3 minutes, then when Noah switched to the offensive side, it would be their defeat. Whoosh! While he spoke, a figure shot over like a rocket, accompanied by a low and deep air explosion sound. In an instant, he appeared in front of Noah. The person who could have such speed was naturally 16 knights. Without much time to think, Noah's eyes flashed with a fierce light. He suddenly lifted his foot and stomped heavily on the ground. The powerful force directly shook the hard ground into powder, setting off a burst of wind and sand, which covered Noah's body. TSK, you still have this move. 16 Knights, who was preparing to throw a punch, was hit by the sudden burst of wind and sand, but his body did not stop at all. He directly rushed into the wind and sand, and his figure also disappeared inside. However, just as 16 Knights' figure rushed into the wind and sand, a figure rushed out from another direction like lightning. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and he quickly retreated like a rabbit. However, in the next second, Noah, who was rushing over, raised his head and looked at the sky. There, a figure was suspended there. Impressively, it was Yao, who used the griffin's whirlwind favor. "Hey!" Yao let out an extremely imposing shout, and with a spin of her body, she suddenly rolled up a whirlwind mixed with pitch-black devil flames. It shook the atmosphere, and the pitch-black flame whirlwind was like a drill that broke through the sky, sweeping towards Noah's direction. Looking at the pitch-black flaming whirlwind descending from the sky, Noah stopped in his tracks and dodged, hiding behind a huge rock at the side. The pitch-black flame whirlwind fell from the sky heavily on the huge rock, and the huge rock suddenly exploded, exploding into thick dust that spread on the ground. Like a fog, it shrouded the space with a diameter of a few hundred meters. Cough, cough, cough. In the thick dust, Noah rushed out with a dusty face. He coughed and smiled bitterly. That group of problem children, they actually made me so embarrassed. As soon as this sentence fell, an unruly laughter rang out. Unfortunately, little brother, we planned for so long not just to make you embarrassed, but to defeat you. As soon as the voice fell, clang! A burst of extremely dazzling starlight bloomed. Chapter 16:24. Clang! An extremely dazzling light shone from No-Name's base, illuminating the entire space. Under the shroud of the dazzling light, everything was dyed a gorgeous white, so dazzling that it was difficult to describe. And in the center of the dazzling light, 16 Knights smiled, his eyes flashing with the dazzling light, and raised his right arm in the direction of Noah. On his right hand an aurora shone like a star map, and the dazzling light poured out in all directions like a tide. Seeing this scene happen with his own eyes, Noah's heart shook, and a surprised expression finally appeared on his face. Because at this moment in Noah's heart there was an extremely strong sense of crisis. So Noah understood. That light, that gift, it can't be? You finally found it? The corners of 16th Knight's mouth curled up slightly as the dazzling light in his eyes became even more intense. I only found out what the true form of this power was after I came to this box. Moreover, I was inspired by you, little brother. So, little brother, if you don't take this seriously, don't blame me when you die. Die? That was not an exaggeration. Least Noah knew. If he couldn't take the light from 16 Knight's hand, then he might really die. Even if the many gods in the heaven realm were here, perhaps, they would believe it without a doubt, and would feel shocked. Because no one would think that the power that could only be used by a person who had the ability to become the center of a group of gods would actually appear in the body of a second human. Yes, this is my biggest trump card. 16 Knights declared loudly. The hero of the final trial who crusaded against absolute evil and closed world. Take my another cosmology and try it out. The aurora shining in 16 Knights' hand suddenly converged into a beam. Wang! Accompanied by the sound of space trembling, the divine aurora that covered the entire space like a tidal wave suddenly turned into an aurora pillar that pierced through the heavens and the earth. It rubbed against the air and cut across the sky, shooting toward Noah's direction. Wherever the aurora pillar passed, the ground was dug up without any suspense. The soil and rocks did not even have a chance to come into contact with the atmosphere, and directly evaporated without leaving a trace. At this moment space was distorted, the atmosphere was twisted, and even the light of the stars was ruthlessly overtaken, annihilated in the holy aurora, disappearing without a trace. Therefore, in this world, there was nothing more dazzling than the holy aurora. Noah's vision had long been filled with the dazzling aurora. In such a situation, Noah, on the contrary, calmed down. And this was the evidence that Noah was serious. With intuition, Noah knew. At this time, the aurora that 16 Knights wielded was the strongest attack that could even penetrate the sky and shatter the stars. In the face of that strongest attack, even Noah only had two ways to deal with it. 1. Using more than 4 avatars at the same time with the same power that was more than 3 digits above the box. Only then could it be possible to block it. 2. Using the same trump card to counterattack. However, 3 minutes had not passed and Noah could not attack. Then I can only offset it. The another cosmology named Avesta had no way to imitate the human's cosmology. However, if it was also another cosmology, then there was no problem at all. This was because another cosmology was an independent cosmology to begin with. Even if the user was a human, it could still be imitated. Clang! Noah's whole body suddenly bloomed with the same dazzling starlight, illuminating the entire sky. Activate Avesta. Counteracted in turn, simulating another cosmology. At this moment, the starlight that bloomed from Noah's body directly suppressed the surrounding aurora, becoming the second color between heaven and earth. Just like that, the starlight skyrocketed and rushed straight to the sky, instantly enveloping the entire space. Like a vortex of light, it suddenly appeared in a corner of no-name space. Then the towering aurora pillar carried a terrifying power that even shook the space, violently swept over like lightning, colliding with the dazzling vortex of light with a loud bang. Rumble. Amidst the earth-shattering noise, the aurora pillar and the vortex of light collided with a loud bang, stirring up a terrifying energy storm. From the point of collision, the shockwave spread out like lightning. The scene that resembled the explosion of a star caused the surrounding ground to crack inch by inch and collapse one after another. It was like a hurricane that spanned across the heavens and the earth. Everywhere it passed, the temperature between the heavens and the earth would suddenly rise, causing the entire atmosphere to become violent. It shook the space and set off waves of ripples. This was just the aftermath. Just the aftermath of the collision between the two simulated star Atlas, another cosmology, turned the surrounding area into hell. Everything was annihilated into powder and completely disappeared. If 16th Night's another cosmology was allowed to land on the land of no name, then not to mention the surrounding area, perhaps the entire outer gate of 2105380 would completely disappear, right? Such a terrifying power caused the terrifying energy storm's aftermath to fiercely shake Noah's body. Boom! There was a muffled sound that caused one's heart to shrink. Noah's body was like a kite with a broken string. He flew backwards and smashed violently onto the ground. After rubbing against the ground for a distance of several hundred meters, he slowly came to a stop. However, upon closer inspection, Noah did not land on his back, but his feet rubbed against the ground and he was fiercely sent flying. As for his body, he did not suffer any injuries. After all, with the power of Avesta, the power of the pillar of light that penetrated the heavens and the earth would be offset. Even if such a terrifying aftermath was produced, just the aftermath alone would not be able to injure the current Noah. Of course, Noah still felt a tightness in his chest, and his body stiffened for an extremely short period of time. This momentary stiffening caused the scales of victory to tip. Boom! Without any warning, the ground behind Noah suddenly exploded, filling the sky with dirt and gravel. Immediately, a steel sphere rushed out from the ground. From the steel sphere that suddenly broke out of the ground, a delicate shout sounded. Oma! Remove the defense. As soon as the delicate shout sounded, another voice suddenly sounded. Understood. The ice-cold steel sphere suddenly wriggled like a wave, and flashed with electricity, suddenly changing its form. Not long after, a mountain goat with majestic horns, strong and powerful limbs, and silver fur appeared in the air. Its entire body was bursting with electricity, and on the back of the mountain goat that was bursting with electricity, a young girl was riding on it. It was Flying Bird. With his superb sensing ability, Noah was clearly aware of the movement behind him. He forcefully whipped his body and suddenly turned around. Ha! Just as Noah was about to dodge, Fei Niao, who was riding on the goat's back, let out a delicate cry. Without any hesitation, she leaped down towards Noah, who was below. That scene was simply like a young girl who was about to commit suicide by jumping off a cliff, without any protection at all. If Flying Bird was allowed to fall like this young girl, who was no different from an ordinary person in terms of physical ability, would definitely end up with injuries all over her body. At this moment, Noah's face could not help but show a sluggish expression, and hurriedly reached out his hand, subconsciously catching the falling Flying Bird. Thus, the outcome was revealed. Pa! Flying Bird reached out a hand and patted Noah's shoulder. A contract flashed and floated down from the air. Chapter 1625. Silence. There was a deathly silence. Noah looked at the contract document that floated down from mid-air, and his face was full of shock. Because, on the contract document it was marked with such content. The contestant from the white camp has reached the winning condition. The game is over. In other words, Noah lost. Even Flying Bird seemed to not believe this result. Ignoring the fact that Noah was carrying her in his arms, She turned her head and asked the goat with uncertainty. Did we succeed? Alma. The goat, that flying bird called Alma, nodded and spoke in human language. Yes, you succeeded, my master. Congratulations on winning against the hero who could single-handedly defeat absolute evil and closed world in the final trial. Really succeeded? Flying Bird was overjoyed and cheered. That's great. Looking at Flying Bird, who was cheering in his arms, Noah opened and closed his mouth several times, but he couldn't say a word. In the end, Noah could only say this. Aren't you guys too despicable? Despicable. Flying Bird stopped cheering and stared at Noah. I can't pretend that I didn't hear that. How are we despicable? Noah couldn't say anything for a while. After all, in the game of gifts, using wisdom is a very important part. The three problem children first launched a surprise attack on Noah, letting Noah, who was on the defense, use the Phoenix incarnation to dodge. Then they let Yao use the gift of Maxilas to seal Noah's speed. Then they let 16 Knights use another cosmology to force out Noah's trump card, forcing Noah to be on the defense. Then Flying Bird relied on its new gift to survive the aftermath of the collision between the two simulated star Atlas, another cosmology. It then hid underground and waited for Noah to reveal a flaw before launching a surprise attack. If at that time Flying Bird launched an attack on Noah, then Noah, with his superb sensing ability, would definitely react in time and dodge. However, Flying Bird didn't launch an attack. Instead, she risked her own injury and took a gamble. She gambled on whether Noah would choose to catch Flying Bird, knowing that she would be injured. In the end, using Noah's gentleness, Flying Bird won. It sounded despicable, but skillfully using the opponent's weakness was also a very important method in the game of gifts. In this game, Noah's weakness was that he was too gentle. He couldn't sit and watch Flying Bird get injured, which was why he was checkmated. Therefore, from the perspective of the game, no one would see this method as despicable. Otherwise, Flying Bird, with her extremely high self-esteem, would definitely not use this method. Could it be that the famous human hero thinks that the three of us working together is despicable? Flying Bird said provocatively. But before the battle began, undoubtedly, a certain person swore that even if the three of us worked together, we still wouldn't be able to beat you, right? Your Excellency Noah, this time it is indeed your loss. Alma also said the same thing. Here it's better to admit it honestly. Noah was speechless and could only look at the goat-like divine beast in front of him. Almaty. That was the name of this goat-like divine beast. Almatia was once the goddess of fertility, who nurtured the young Greek god Zeus. The god of forging, Hephaestus, once used the fur of this goat-like goddess of fertility to create a divine shield for Zeus and Athena. Those two divine shields were both named Aegis. Yes, the famous Aegis shield was made from the fur of this goddess of fertility. However, this goddess had already fallen once. Her fur, after a few twists and turns, fell into the hands of No Name, who was still at his peak 3 years ago, and had been preserved until now, because they considered that even though Flying Bird had a powerful gift, she didn't have a way to protect herself. Therefore, after some discussion, the people of No Name found Almadia's fur and asked Willow's Wisp to create a new gift. With the assistance of Vera, who could control the realm of life and death, and with the addition of a precious mineral called adamantine, the former goddess of fertility was reincarnated into a divine beast and made a contract with Flying Bird. It must be known that adamantine was comparable to divine precious iron, and it was a mineral with a high tolerance for gifts. Many of the bestowment weapons that were made to imitate godhead weapons were made from such precious minerals. Therefore, after the fur was covered with adamantine, Almaty could transform into the strongest shield of the Greek gods, Aegis, which could block all attacks at any time. However, if Almaty wanted to transform into the divine shield Aegis, she must have the divine artifact of the sky. However, because of Almatia's reincarnation, she had already lost her divine artifact and divinity. For that reason, if Flying Bird wished to use the defensive ability of the Aegis divine shield, she would have to feed Almatia 4 orbs that were imbued with a simulated divine spark. Only then would Almatia be able to temporarily retrieve her original divine spark. Although there were restrictions with this divine shield, Flying Bird had the defensive ability of a battle fortress, and she didn't have to worry about her own safety. It was because of this gift that Flying Bird was able to survive the aftermath of the collision between the two simulated star Atlas, another cosmology, and hide underground, right? All right. Noah could only say helplessly. This time I have indeed lost. Flying Bird then revealed a victorious smile, and immediately after, her face turned red as she bashfully stood up. If that's the case, then hurry up and put me down. Noah smiled bitterly as he put Flying Bird down. Then he suddenly thought of something and was suddenly shocked. Not good. How are the others? The collision of the two another cosmology had completely razed the surrounding area to the ground. Looking up, the surrounding land that was originally abandoned was now completely destroyed and turned into scorched earth. Under such circumstances, if Flying Bird could rely on Almadia's defense to escape, then what about the others? As soon as this thought appeared in Noah's mind, a humorous laugh rang out. Ha ha ha, your companions are here. As the voice fell, a few figures appeared out of thin air, directly flashing out of space. Impressively, it was the group of No Name. In addition, there was also Vera, Jack, and Aisha. Wah! Aisha looked at the scorched earth around her and let out a gasp of surprise. It's actually become so serious. That's right. Vera had a dumbfounded expression. So powerful. It's only a game. You all are too reckless. Jack let out a rare bitter smile. If it wasn't for Vera's spatial jump, everyone would be in a miserable state. It's precisely because we wanted you all to save the situation that we had you all hide at the side, right? 16th Knights patted the dust on his body, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. In the end, just like the plan, we obtained victory. Flying Bird. Yao walked toward Flying Bird and extended his hand. High five. Flying Bird happily high-fived Yao, sharing the victory of the game. Only Letitia, Pest, Ran, and Black Rabbit were speechless as they looked at their surroundings that had been razed to the ground and revealed sorrowful expressions. Now who knows how much time we'll have to spend to restore the land here? Letitia. Spare me. I'm already angry enough. Pest. If you think about it carefully, this area will have to be rebuilt sooner or later anyway. Now that it's like this, it's much easier. Run. Woo-woo. Black Rabbit still stuffed in his mouth. At this moment, 16th Knights arrived before Noah and looked straight at Noah. Do you see now? Even if we are far from being a match for you in a head-on battle, it's not like we have no chance of winning in a game. After saying those words, 16th Knight scratched his head in a somewhat embarrassed manner. Then, as if giving up, he spoke. Thus you can do whatever you want to do. Even if you're not here in the East District, there's still us. Hearing those words, Noah was finally stunned. At this moment, no matter how slow Noah was, he should have realized what was going on. Although these three problem children were talking about revenge, they were actually using this game to tell Noah one thing. That was, even if Noah was not here, they would still do their best to protect the East District. It's not like we've been stagnant all this time. It's just as you've seen. Right now, all of us have sufficient battle strength to deal with any situation, Flying Bird said with great confidence. Since that's the case, what else do you have to worry about? Don't worry. Yao nodded at Noah. There's still us here. Letitia, Pest, Ran, Black Rabbit, Vera, Jack, Aisha, and the others all looked at Noah. Their eyes revealed the same expression as the three problem children, gentle and serious. Looking at his companions, Noah's eyes flickered. After a long while, he finally laughed heartily. Then, I'll leave it to you all. Everyone nodded in agreement. Only then did the unique farewell ceremony come to an end. Noah left this world with a peace of mind. Chapter 1626. When Noah opened his eyes again, the usual pure white space appeared in front of him. Feeling the comfortable feeling as if he had returned to his mother's body, Noah's mood was more or less complicated. Wang. And as if seeing through the complicated feelings in Noah's heart, in the pure white world, pieces of feathers emitting a soft white light flew around Noah like little birds, and began to circle around Noah. That was a scene that often happened in the past. Looking at the pieces of feathers that were constantly circling around him, Noah's mood was unexpectedly comforted, and he raised one hand. The pieces of feathers were immediately attracted to Noah like white pigeons that were attracted by food, and they all flew to Noah's slowly raised hand and gathered on it. As if there was a gust of wind blowing, The pieces of feathers danced up and down. In the pure white world, the scene of the young man playing with the feathers fluttering in the air gave people a very warm feeling. This feeling also penetrated into Noah's heart. Therefore, Noah finally seemed to have made up his mind, and he waved his hand to disperse the pieces of feathers that had gathered. Then Noah raised his head and looked above the pure white world, his dark and deep eyes flashing with a strange light. Back then, when Noah used the sovereignty of the 24 suns to try to draw out the possibility in his body, in his dream, he could not help but continue to rise in this world. In the end he saw the crimson sky. Then, in reality, does the crimson sky also exist? If it does, is there something in the crimson sky that has been troubling Noah all this time? What kind of existence are those things? At the thought of this, Noah's heart flashed with extreme hesitation, and even his expression became a little uncertain. Phew! After an unknown period of time, Noah let out a sigh of relief, and a determined emotion appeared in his eyes. Fly! After issuing an order to the feather necklace on his neck, Noah's body became light as a feather. The outline of his body seemed to be wrapped in a layer of dim light as he floated into the air. Immediately after, Noah controlled his body and flew towards the top of the pure white world. Wang! Noah did not know that below him, the feathers flying back and forth seemed to have been stimulated, trembling back and forth, falling into a commotion. Noah did not have the time to notice this scene. His body had already risen to a certain height, and he could no longer see the fluttering feathers as he soared into the sky. Noah didn't know how long he had been flying. In the space between worlds there was no concept of time or space. He couldn't even feel how high he was flying. If this was a normal world, Noah would be able to judge based on the strength of the wind and the thinness of the air. However, in the space between worlds there was no wind and no air, and it was impossible for life to survive. Only Noah could inconceivably move around in the space between worlds. Undoubtedly, in a normal world, Noah also needed air, and he also needed all the living conditions that a human needs. However, in the space between worlds, all of this seemed to have nothing to do with him, and Noah could move freely. However, all this time Noah had not moved much in the space between worlds. At best, he used the space between worlds as a world transfer station, and carried out world transfers. This was the first time that Noah carried out his own activities in the space between worlds. Therefore, Noah did not know how high he had flown, nor did he know how long he had been flying. Noah only knew that when he flew to a certain height, his heart inexplicably had the thought of retreating. That kind of thought, like a shadow, could not help but blind his heart. With this kind of shadow at a certain moment, Noah seemed to feel something and raised his head, looking up. In the next second, Noah's eyes suddenly froze, and his body suddenly stopped. Clang! He saw that above the pure white world, a crimson sky was imprinted there, emitting a blood-like light. Staring at the crimson sky above, Noah's fists unconsciously began to clench tightly. Sure enough, it exists. In the dream, Noah did not observe it clearly. Now Noah could clearly see that the crimson sky, rather than calling it a sky, was more like a strange space. The surrounding was pure white in all directions, and only that space with a diameter of more than a few thousand meters was crimson red. That crimson space made the shadow in Noah's heart expand dozens of times, or even hundreds of times, causing Noah's clenched fists to begin to sweat. Noah's intuition told him. Next, he absolutely can't go any further. Noah believes in his intuition. If the scene inside is the same as what I saw in the dream, then even if I go in, the consequences will be unimaginable, right? Noah gritted his teeth. Since the scene in the dream has been confirmed to be real, then the next step is to ask Gaia and Alea. With this idea, Noah took a deep look at the crimson space, turned around and wanted to fly down. However, at this moment, two familiar tender female voices with extremely strong anxiety and panic suddenly exploded in Noah's ears. Little Noah, run! The moment these two familiar tender female voices suddenly sounded in Noah's ears, the shadow in Noah's heart suddenly exploded, turning into the crisis of death. Noah's pupils directly shrank, without any hesitation. His body turned into a sharp arrow and shot down. Crack! Almost at the same time, a sound like something cracking was very clearly transmitted into Noah's ears. Noah didn't stop. As he shot downwards, he turned his head back and looked up. The next second, the scene imprinted in Noah's eyes made his scalp explode, and goosebumps grew all over his body. Crack, 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 crack. In the distance, the crimson space suddenly cracked like glass. In the cracks, a blood-like liquid seeped out. No, that's not liquid. What seeped out from the cracks of the crimson space was an overwhelming, densely packed group of Grim Reapers. Yes, Grim Reaper. The cloak covering their body was red. The Grim Reaper that appeared in Noah's dream. Crack. At this moment, an indescribable sound rang out from the bodies of the Grim Reapers. Then Noah saw it. The dense group of locust-like Grim Reapers, like a rain curtain pouring down from the crimson sky, swept down violently. Undoubtedly, their speed was not fast, but the distance between them and Noah was shortened by an unknown amount in an instant. Bang! Without any hesitation, Noah mobilized the endless energy in his body and turned it all into divine power. Like a golden storm, it soared up from his body. In the depths of Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate connected to the 10 patterns on the stone plate trembled, then suddenly turned and pointed in the direction of the phoenix. Crack! Noah directly turned into a phantom, entered the world of speed, and rushed in the direction of the ground. Something that Noah did not expect happened. Crack! He saw that the dense group of locust-like Grim Reapers once again made an indescribable sound, as if they had also entered the world of speed, and shrouded down overwhelmingly. What? Noah's expression changed abruptly. In just a moment, the rain-like Grim Reapers were like turbulent waves, roaring and shrouding Noah's body. Noah looked at the Grim Reapers that were like monstrous waves, roaring and shrouding his body. He wanted to make a certain degree of resistance, but his body's instinct seemed to be telling him not to waste his energy, and he stiffened up. Noah's mind became blank. Chapter 16:27. Screech Dash. With an indescribable sound, the densely packed group of reapers surged downwards like a tidal wave that could devour everything. From Noah's perspective, the scene was as if the entire sky was filled with Grim Reapers that were as red as blood. They collectively emitted a terrifying aura that poured down like a torrential downpour. It was completely meaningless to compare them in terms of quantity, right? This was because each of the Grim Reapers was a few sizes bigger than Noah. Their height was estimated to be close to 4 meters tall. There were countless of such Grim Reapers. How many billions would that be? What about billions? Or tens of billions? It would be meaningless to even count the number of Grim Reapers, right? The human tide formed by such a terrifying number of Grim Reapers was enough to drown a continent, let alone Noah, who was only one person. Therefore, looking at the dense group of Grim Reapers that poured down like a torrential rain and surged like a roaring wave, Noah almost subconsciously understood what was going on. Currently, he had no means to resist them at all. So what if he had the authority to display a variety of abilities? So what if he had a treasure vault with more than 1,000 types of relics? So what if he had the physical ability to surpass deities? So what if he had endless energy? Currently, he definitely had no way to block the Grim Reaper's tide that was surging toward him like a roaring wave. It was not that Noah did not have enough means, but the difference in level was too great. It was just like how a world boxing champion could easily defeat hundreds or thousands of ordinary people like himself, but even if such an existence threw a punch at the sky, let alone cause any impact, it wouldn't even be able to touch anything, right? For Noah, the Grim Reaper's tide was the sky that he could not touch. No matter how brilliant his means were, he would still not be able to touch the overwhelming red shadows of death that were surging toward him. That was the fact that Noah's instinct told him. Although he had not tried, even if he tried, it would just be a dying struggle, right? However, so what if you're struggling? A violent hurricane-like divine power surged from Noah's body. Like another monstrous golden wave, it swept across the area below the Grim Reaper's tide that was pouring down like a torrential downpour. Instead of dying in despair, why don't we fight for our lives before we die? At this moment, in the depths of Noah's heart, the stone plate with the 10 patterns connected to it trembled like never before. Immediately after, half of the 10 patterns blossomed with dazzling light. The giant, white horse, the dragon emperor, beasts, phoenix. At this moment, Noah pushed his power to the limit, using 5 incarnations at the same time. I am the strongest and I hold all victory in my hands. No matter if it is a human or a demon, I am the one who defeats all enemies. I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. As Noah chanted the holy words of the God of victory, a terrifying storm of divine energy surged from his body. His pitch-black and deep eyes were dyed with a dazzling golden color, flashing with a brilliant light. "I don't care what you are. If you want to take my life, let's give it a try then." Amidst the violent roar, the terrifying divine storm that surged from Noah's body began to flash with a bright light. The light was like a myriad of stars, flashing and condensing together, forming a shape. In just a moment, countless xenomorphs appeared from the divine storm. They were handsome draconic horses. Their entire bodies were covered in crimson armor, and their armor was decorated with dazzling gems. They had a dragon horn on their foreheads, and their eyes flashed with red light. Their bodies were dozens of meters tall, and they stepped on golden flames. They were gigantic dragon horses, and their bodies were majestic. Combining the power of the giant, white horse, dragon emperor, beasts, and phoenix, Noah created a tide of draconic horses that was comparable to the death god's tide. This result caused Noah's whole body to burn with burning pain. His internal organs felt like they were about to explode, letting out an unbearable sound. Screech. Seeing the innumerable majestic dragon horses appear, the tide of death that was swarming over let out a roar that sounded like a furious roar. Nay, as if competing with each other, the majestic draconic horses let out a neatly arranged neigh that resounded throughout the entire space between worlds. The neigh of the draconic horses faintly carried the roar of dragons and tigers, like an echo, turning into ripples that reverberated in the sky. Immediately, the golden draconic horse tide and the red death god's tide rushed out at lightning speed, crossing the entire space in an instant, quietly colliding. Rumble. Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, the draconic horse tide and the death god's tide that fiercely collided with each other turned into a terrifying golden flame and a red storm, crazily entangling with each other. Boom! Like a star exploding, the unimaginable golden flame and red storm swept out from the center of the pure white world, instantly expanding to an area of thousands of meters. If such a collision occurred in an ordinary world, perhaps at this moment, the world would have already let out a mournful cry, the space would have already been shattered inch by inch, and even the atmosphere would have been completely evaporated, leaving not a trace behind. Unfortunately, this pure white world called space between worlds was terrifyingly sturdy. There was no concept of time, nor was there any concept of space. Even the atmosphere did not exist, allowing the terrifying golden sea of fire and scarlet storm to silently expand, occupying a corner of the world. However, if someone were to be caught in it, the consequences would be unimaginable. At the very least, even existences like the White Yuksha and the Queen of All Saints would at least be seriously injured if they were to be caught in it. Undoubtedly, it was a collision of this level. In the next second, the scales of victory tipped in favor of one side. Wong! The scarlet storm appeared to be mocking something as it emitted a buzzing sound. Immediately, it forcefully penetrated the bright golden sea of fire. The terrifying flame sea that was formed by the power of the 5 incarnations of giant, white horse, dragon emperor, beast horde, and phoenix, was like an illusion at this moment. It could not block the red storm at all, and the red storm passed through it as if it did not see anything. What dash? Noah's expression changed drastically. Taking advantage of this moment, the red storm passed through the terrifying golden flame sea and rushed in front of Noah. Like a bloody mouth, it swelled and crazily enveloped Noah's body. Noah was already powerless to turn the situation around. Clang! Just as the red storm was about to swallow Noah's body, a bright golden light suddenly bloomed on Noah's body. Noah did not even have the time to react. A golden sword that looked like a key suddenly emerged from his body. With a turn of his body, it shot towards the sky. That is, Noah could not help but be shocked. This was because Noah did not recognize the golden sword that was shaped like a key. It was the gate of Babylon that Gaia and Aleia gave to Noah. Under Noah's gaze, the golden sword that shot up into the sky and met the red storm that was surging towards it trembled slightly. Pung! The gate of Babylon treasure exploded in an instant, turning into golden powder that sprinkled down from the sky. Then it stopped in midair, like a layer of golden light film that covered the sky. The moment the crimson storm came into contact with the powdery light film, it abruptly froze and was unable to move any further. Between heaven and earth, silence was restored. Noah could only stare blankly at this scene. He was unable to react at all, and his body fell down. Then 2 pairs of rather tender hands hugged him. Chapter 16:28. In the pure white world, 2 petite girls hugged Noah from the left and right as they descended from the sky and slowly landed on the ground. In the surroundings, the feathers that were emitting a soft white light immediately surrounded Noah, as if they were extremely happy about the result of Noah's escape, and they danced in the air excitedly. It was only at this moment that Noah finally reacted. He looked to his side and was immediately stunned. Gaia? Alea? The petite girls that suddenly appeared were Gaia and Alea. Are you okay? Gaia said with lingering fear. That was really scary. It's different from our world. There is no concept of time here. Therefore, although we immediately entered the space between worlds, the time still doesn't match. Alea said with an indifferent expression. Fortunately, we made it in time. Hearing Gaia and Alea's words, Noah's expression was a little uncertain. But why are you here? In the past, Gaia and Alea undoubtedly said that only Noah could enter the space between worlds. Even the 2 great restraints couldn't enter the space between worlds. Now, how did the 2 great restraints come out of his world? Don't be surprised, little Noah. We didn't lie to you. If we relied on our own strength, we wouldn't be able to enter the space between worlds. Gaia gave a rare bitter laugh. This is an exception. There won't be another chance like this in the future, right? In short, it's good that you're fine. Alea said. After all, it would be very troublesome to explain the situation in detail. Hearing this, Noah's face showed a trace of bitterness. He raised his head and looked at the red storm outside the powder film. His voice was more or less self-deprecating. Is there anything more troublesome than that thing? Gaia and Alea were speechless. However, it was clear that Noah was saved because of Gaia and Alea. I didn't expect the gate of Babylon, that you gave me to be able to block that thing. Noah's eyes flickered. Seems that it's not just a treasury. No, it's really just a treasury. Gaia shook her head. The gate of Babylon doesn't have any special power. It's just a treasury. However, in order to make it useful at a crucial moment, we added some special things inside. Alea also looked at the sky. So, just like our appearance here, the gate of Babylon can resolve the crisis brought about by the disaster. This is the only time it can do so. Is that so? Noah nodded slowly and looked at Gaia and Alea with an unprecedentedly serious expression. Then, can you explain to me what's going on? Gaia and Alea exchanged glances before turning to Noah in unison. Has this day finally arrived? Gaia wasn't as naughty as before. Instead, she was like a wise person who had seen through everything. Her expression was unusually calm. Although I knew that you would have to face all of this sooner or later, I didn't expect it to come so suddenly. Suddenly? It was indeed very sudden. If it wasn't sudden, why would Noah have such a dream when he was trying to use the sun's sovereignty to draw out the possibility of the disaster from his body? If it wasn't sudden, why would Noah encounter the biggest crisis in history without any preparation? However, just like what Gaia had said, sooner or later, Noah would have to face all of this. At this stage, there's no benefit in continuing to hide it from you. Alea's gaze turned to Noah. Since you suddenly went to search for that thing, it proves that the time is ripe for you to come into contact with your true mission. In the past, I hid it from you because I didn't want you to come into contact with that thing before the time was ripe. Now there's no need for that. Little Noah, we will tell you everything now. Gaia smiled at Noah. Including the meaning of your existence and why you exist. Gaia and Alea looked at each other again and raised one hand at the same time. Clang! The fluttering feathers suddenly gathered and surrounded Noah, Gaia and Alea, releasing dazzling radiance. The light enveloped the 3 of them, causing their figures to be enveloped by the white light in an instant. Then they disappeared. Noah felt a blur in front of his eyes, and his entire vision was dyed white. Then 2 small hands held both of Noah's hands, bringing him back to his senses. After coming back to reality, the radiance in front of Noah's eyes began to fade. The scene in front of Noah was still that pure white world. However, looking at this pure white world, Noah was stunned. Because in this pure white world, there were no feathers emitting a soft white light, nor was there a bone-chilling red storm. There was only a hazy mist. It was extremely hazy and filled the entire between the worlds with white mist. This is... Noah couldn't help but look around. Don't be nervous. Alea held Noah's hand tightly. Now what you see is just an image reproduced by the world. It's not the real world. That's right. Gaia nodded. This used to be the between the worlds before anything was born. The between the worlds before anything was born, Noah said with uncertainty. In other words, before the world was born? Yes. Alea looked at the white mist that filled the entire space. At the very beginning, before the world was born, the between the worlds was like this. At the same time, this is the most primitive between the worlds. Gaia extended her hand and pointed in front. Little Noah, look there. Noah immediately looked in the direction Gaia pointed and looked in front of the white mist. Because the mist was too dense at the beginning, Noah couldn't see anything at all. However, gradually Noah discovered something. In front of the extremely dense white mist, there was a crystal. It was an extremely pure and clean crystal without any color. It was as clear as a lake. Wang! The pure crystal floated in the air, and as it spun, it emitted wisps of mist. The white mist and emotions in the entire pure white world were all emitted from the crystal. Looking at the dazzling and beautiful crystal, Noah almost subconsciously asked, What is that? That is the center of the between the worlds. Alea immediately replied. It is also the origin of everything. Without it, nothing would be born in this world, Gaia said. From a human's point of view, this place is equivalent to the universe. However, in this universe called Between the Worlds, what is born is not a celestial body but a world. All the worlds are born from the center of the Between the Worlds because that is the origin of the mist. Alea's voice clearly entered Noah's ears. Originally, in the Between the Worlds, nothing would be born, but the mist emitted from the center brought life to the Between the Worlds. Following Alea's words in front of them, the mist suddenly gathered into a ball without any reason. The ball of mist started to beat like a heart. With every beat, the ball of mist would start to condense. In the end, the ball of mist emitted a gentle light and turned into a feather. Do you see it? Gaia pointed at the feather. That is the starting world. The starting world. Noah looked at Gaia. Why do you call it the starting world? The one who answered this question was not Gaia but Alea. Because that world is the reason why there are so many worlds in the Between the Worlds. Chapter 1629. In fact, this was not something difficult to understand. The universe could give birth to many planets. However, within the range of human observation, life had only appeared on Earth in the entire universe. If Between the Worlds was compared to the universe, then the same logic applied. In the beginning of this universe, only one world was born. That wasn't an amazing world. It didn't have a restraining force like ours, nor did it have the mysteries that little Noah encountered in the past. It was just an extremely ordinary world. Gaia looked at the lonely feather fluttering in the hazy white fog. His voice seemed to come from a very distant place. In that world, humans didn't have any special powers. They only had to repeat their ordinary lives day after day. There was no mystery to speak of. However, such an ordinary world became the beginning of the entire Between the Worlds, Alea said faintly. Because, even if there was no mystery, humans had extremely rich imaginations. They had always been pursuing mystery in their fantasies. Parallel worlds, dimensional spaces, alien domains, superpowers, different dimensions. Humans with intelligence used extremely rich imaginations to pursue these mysteries. They also created these mysterious existences in their own minds and fantasized wildly. Gaia smiled helplessly. As the will of the planet, I can't understand why humans would pursue these things. However, those fantasies are the foundation of existences like us. While Gaia and Alea were talking, the hazy fog in front of them changed again. Around the lonely feather fluttering in between the worlds, the hazy fog had gradually gathered into clumps and was beating like a heart. As it beat, the clumps of fog also condensed. In the end, those clumps all turned into feathers in a soft white light. Just like what you saw, after the birth of the original world, more and more worlds were born, Alea said to Noah. That wasn't a world that was born by chance. There was only one world that was born purely by chance. The worlds after that were all created by drawing on the fantasies of the humans in that world. They were all specious worlds that were born from the imagination of that world. Absorbing the fantasies of humans? Noah couldn't help but ask. Does the fog have such properties? Therefore, we also call the fog imagination, Gaia said with a smile. And after you were born, the between the worlds that you saw had already become a universe that absorbed the fantasies of the original world. It's a universe filled with fantasies, Alea said word by word. A universe filled with fantasies. An all-encompassing fantasy universe. Noah muttered to himself as he repeated this sentence. After a long while, he fell silent and suddenly opened his mouth again. Then what's the deal with my birth that you just mentioned? Your birth, it wasn't by chance. Gaia hesitated for a moment and then sighed. Your existence is a part of fighting against fantasies. Part of fighting against delusions? Noah's hand tightened slightly, and his eyes flickered as he spoke in a low voice. Then are those red things? Gaia and Alea nodded their heads with a heavy heart. Although the fantasies of the humans in the original world gave birth to many worlds, humans were originally an existence that didn't know whether they were good or evil, Alea said with her identity as the amalgamation of human consciousness. Naturally, if there are good fantasies, there will also be bad fantasies. Those fantasies also became nutrients for the fog and were absorbed by the fog. While speaking, the fog in front of them changed again. A ball of fog gathered together like the world that was born before. It beat like a heart and gradually condensed. However, the ball of fog gradually pulsed and condensed, and its color began to change. From the pure white color at the beginning, it gradually turned into the color of blood. Seeing the ball of blood-red fog, Noah's palm couldn't help but smoke. Gaia and Alea's expressions also became very serious. Under the gaze of the three people, the blood-red fog continued to shrink. In the end, accompanied by a bloody light, it turned into a red space. That is the existence that absorbed all of the evil fantasies. Gaia bit her lips. All of the disasters started from there. As his voice faded, the scarlet space suddenly began to crack, creating many cracks. One by one, deathly red figures rushed out from the crack. They surged out like a tide and rushed towards the feathers that were emitting a gentle white light. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they flew towards the feathers that were emitting a gentle white light. At this moment, the feathers in the pure white world were like frightened birds, fleeing in all directions. However, there were still some feathers that were caught by the red figures. The red figures, like the god of death, turned into a red storm one after another. It was like a sharp blade that ruthlessly cut through the feathers. The feathers that were cut by the crimson storm were all cut into halves, losing all their luster and falling to the ground in a dull manner. Seeing this scene, Noah's heart burned with rage. If it wasn't for the fact that everything in front of him was just an image, Noah wouldn't have been able to stop himself from attacking. Although Noah couldn't do anything to those red figures, Noah could only watch as the worlds were cut in half. That feeling was really unbearable. Originally, the world should not be able to interfere with the world. Just like how if two planets of the same mass in the universe collide with each other, they would definitely die at the same time. As an existence that shares the same root as the world, the shadow that has absorbed the fog of evil should not be able to affect the world. Alea continued to speak with an incomparably calm and indifferent tone. However, those red figures are the embodiment of the evil fantasies. They are like cells that are born with the ability to devour. They can affect the worlds and even destroy them. Fortunately, those worlds were born from the evil fantasies, Gaia added. As long as the worlds and the space between worlds aren't completely destroyed and the people's fantasies still exist, then these worlds can be repaired. Wait. Noah was suddenly startled. Doesn't that mean? Looks like you've already thought of it, Gaia faintly sighed. That's right. The only things that can be repaired are the worlds that were born from the evil fantasies. If the original world is destroyed, then it definitely can't be repaired. And as luck would have it, the starting world was destroyed. Alea looked up and stared ahead. It was during the first shadow hunt. Noah followed Alea's gaze and looked forward. There was a feather that wasn't cut in half like the other feathers. Instead, it was shattered like glass by the red storm, leaving behind only a pile of debris. The shadow that was born from the evil thoughts can affect and destroy other worlds, but other worlds still can't interfere with it, as it has the same origin, Gaia slowly said. Under such circumstances, a portion of the worlds that had perfect wills began to realize that they had to think of a solution. Otherwise, these worlds that had no resistance at all would one day be completely destroyed. For this reason, the world itself initiated an action that all the other worlds responded to and began. Alea turned his head and looked straight at Noah. They gathered the fragments of the original world that could no longer be repaired, and gathered the power of all the worlds to turn those fragments into a life form. This sentence made Noah's heart beat fiercely. Because the original world could no longer be repaired, the world successfully interfered with its fragments and also successfully injected life into those fragments, turning them into a human. Gaia held Noah's hand and looked straight at him. That person is you, Noah. What formed your body was the fragments of the original world. What formed your life was the power of all the worlds. Alea also held Noah's hand. Therefore, you are in existence on the same level as the worlds. You are also the child of the worlds born from the many worlds. You can freely travel between worlds, find the lost world fragments, and repair the destroyed worlds. After all, every world here was born from the human imagination of the original world that formed Noah's body. Noah was born with the ability to repair these worlds. As for the shadow that was born from the evil thoughts, it was also an illusion of evil that was obtained from the original world. Therefore, Noah should have the ability to interfere with the other side and eliminate all the disasters that were born from the evil thoughts. If it wasn't for the fact that the original world was just an ordinary world and didn't have any mysteries, the world itself wouldn't have been destroyed so easily. Gaia and Alea said at the same time. Therefore, Noah, you are the only existence that can eliminate the natural enemies of the world. Chapter 1630. When the dazzling white light began to fade, Noah, Gaia, and Alea returned to the pure white world. Noah opened his eyes with a complicated expression. Gaia, who was still holding Noah's hand, couldn't help but speak. After you were born, for your growth, the many worlds here sent you into one of them. After all, even though you've been bestowed with sufficient intelligence, emotions are something that can only be developed through contact with all sorts of people, Alea said. Although the worlds gave birth to you, they didn't want to treat you as a tool. For this reason, they gave you a good environment to grow up in. That is absolutely necessary. It is because of this that you were sent into that guild full of positive energy and grew up to be a happy child. Gaia smiled sweetly. As for us, we were given the mission of guiding you by the various worlds. That is why we were able to form a connection with you. Don't worry, I don't doubt your intentions. It's just that I didn't expect to have such a background. Noah could only bitterly smile. Moreover, even if you made me sound so powerful, I still couldn't do anything to those shadows. That is because your true strength hasn't been activated yet. Alea immediately said. No matter what, you are still a life formed from the fragments of a world. Although the original world has been destroyed, there is no doubt that your body contains the potential to become an existence that can rival worlds. In other words, little Noah, you have the potential to become an existence that can rival worlds. Gaia reached out a hand and pressed Noah's chest. Isn't it because you came into contact with that possibility that you realized your mission and discovered the existence of the culprit that destroyed the original world? Hearing Gaia and Alea's words, Noah couldn't help but speak. But that possibility can't be activated at all. That is because the power you use to activate that possibility is too weak. Alea shook her head. That is a possibility that can rival an entire world. If you don't use the power of an entire world, you won't be able to activate it. Even if you are lucky enough to activate it with your current human body, you will instantly explode from that huge possibility. Noah was shocked and felt a lingering fear. There was actually such a serious consequence? However, was it a possibility that could rival an entire world? No wonder the power of a sun couldn't be activated. Then what should I do? Noah said helplessly. Even if I can activate the possibility in my body, I won't be able to withstand it. Not to mention not being able to activate it, right? No problem. Gaia solemnly said. We have long been prepared. At this moment, the surrounding feathers that were dancing in the air began to rotate, flashing one after another. Gaia and Alea stepped forward at the same time. As though they were holding something, they slowly raised one of their hands. Wang! Suddenly, the entire space between the worlds began to tremble, and the ground emitted a blinding white light. Noah subconsciously squinted his eyes. Then from the ground that was emitting the dazzling white light, a light source rose and appeared in front of Noah. Looking at the light source, Noah slightly widened his eyes. He saw that in the light source there was a piece of crystal. It was a piece of crystal clear, pure and clean, as clear as water. That is, Noah said in surprise. Isn't that the center of Between the Worlds? Ever since Shadow appeared, the worlds hid the center of Between the Worlds to prevent Shadow from finding it. Alea said as if it was a matter of fact. No matter what, it is the center of the Between Worlds, the source of the imaginative power. Without the imaginative power, a mere fantasy would not have become a factor in the entire Between Worlds situation. And if Shadow finds the center of the world Between Worlds, it might be able to absorb the imaginative power produced by this crystal, causing more imaginative power to be filled with evil fantasies. Who knows? Gaia explained. Therefore the worlds hid it. Now it is time for it to be used. In the end, the origin of the world should be imaginative power. Illusions are just designs and accelerators. Alea was still the same as before, coldly saying something shocking. Since the so-called sovereignty of the sun has no way of drawing out the possibility in your body, then we will use the imaginative power produced by the center of Between the Worlds to convert the sovereignty of the sun into the sovereignty of the world. That will do. What? Noah was really stunned. Sovereignty of the world? Not only will you convert the sovereignty of the sun into the sovereignty of the world, but in order for your body to be able to withstand the huge possibility of a world, you will also need to convert the favor you received from God, which is your ability value, into the favor of the world. Gaia raised her fingers and calculated. In addition, the power you received from God can also be converted into the power of the world. Sovereignty of the world, the power of the world, and the favor of the world can absolutely perfectly convert the possibility in your body into the power of a world. At that time, you will be able to stand on the same level as Shadow. Alea raised her eyes and looked at Noah. It is for this purpose that we suggested you to travel between the worlds and work hard to increase your strength. In the end, you will find a suitable power to convert with imaginative power and draw out the power in your body. Things are progressing more smoothly than we expected. Little Noah, the sovereignty of the sun, the power of God, and the favor of God that you received are all suitable to be converted with imaginative power and upgraded to the power of the world. Everything is on the right track. Gaia took a deep breath. Now it is time to counterattack. Little Noah, are you ready? Hearing this, Noah raised his head and looked at the sky out of reflex. There, the red storm outside the powdery light film had turned back into the red shadow of the Grim Reaper. It was flying back and forth outside the light film like a swarm of locusts, making one's scalp go numb. However, the Grim Reaper's tide didn't have any thoughts of retreating. Presumably, the Grim Reaper's tide should have realized that Noah was the only existence that could threaten them, so they definitely wouldn't retreat before killing Noah. Right? It was because of this that last time, when the Grim Reaper came out to hunt, Gaia and Alea hurriedly called Noah over and didn't hesitate to kill him once to avoid being discovered by the Grim Reaper. At the thought of this, Noah also took a deep breath, calmed himself down, and looked at the translucent crystal. What should I do? Relax your body, Alea directly said. Release your power, sovereignty, and favor. Noah nodded heavily and closed his eyes. In the next moment, Noah's body flashed with a dim light. In the dim light on Noah's body, a stone plate with 10 patterns connected to it, with a sun in the center and 24 engravings in the sun slowly floated forward. At the same time on Noah's back, mysterious characters jumped up and lined up neatly. Like a stream of light, they flew out and circled around the stone plate. Seeing this scene, Gaia and Alea nodded at the same time. Leave the rest to us, Gaia said to Noah. Little Noah, don't worry, we will definitely succeed in turning your power, sovereignty, and favor into a power equal to the world. Will it take a long time? Noah pointed upwards. Will the light screen be able to withstand it? I don't know. The light film was formed by us fusing a trace of imaginative power into the gate of Babylon. Even we were only able to temporarily leave our world and enter the world between worlds with the help of imaginative power, Alea explained. Once the imaginative power is exhausted, the light screen will disappear. and we will return to our original world. There is only one chance like this, and it can't be replicated again. We have to race against time and complete the imaginative power conversion as soon as possible. Gaia patted his chest. Well, in short, leave everything to us. Then what should I do? Noah frowned. Could it be that I'm just going to watch from the side? Gaia and Alea looked at each other. That's true. Gaia muttered to himself for a while before speaking. Since that's the case, little Noah, go and do what you want to do. Do what I want to do? Noah was stunned. No matter what the result is, this time you have to face the disaster that is active in the between worlds. In the end, it would be good if you win, but if you lose, whether it is you or your family, friends, or lovers in the thousands of worlds, they will all die together. Alea reminded, just do what you want to do, and don't leave any regrets. Noah was silent. Chapter 1631. In order to not leave any regrets. After telling Noah these words, Gaia and Alea no longer disturbed Noah. They controlled the center of the between the worlds to generate imagination and upgrade Noah's authority, sovereignty, and favor. Only Noah was left standing there, speechless. Regrets. Thinking about it carefully, Noah really had a lot of things that he was worried about. If this was really the last chance, then no matter what, Noah hoped to complete these things. Thinking about this, Noah silently thanked Gaia and Alea in his heart. Wang. As if they knew what Noah wanted to do the most at this moment. A feather emitting a soft white light lightly fluttered in front of Noah. Looking at the feather floating in front of him, Noah didn't hesitate to raise a hand and press on it. In the next second, Noah's figure turned into a light and flowed into the feather. Gaia and Alea, who secretly saw this scene, showed an expression that was expected. Sure enough, the thing he wants to do the most is go home. Strictly speaking, the Between the Worlds was Noah's home. Unfortunately for Noah, there was only one place that could be called home. Gaia and Alea were very clear on this point. This was the only thing that wouldn't change no matter what happened, right? As the chosen one by the world to become Noah's only hope, Gaia and Alea could only silently bless this child. They hoped that in the end, Noah would not have any regrets. Walala! Before he could open his eyes, Noah heard a clear sound of waves. Among the waves there were even some seagulls crying. Hearing these sounds, Noah knew he was back. Thus, Noah slowly opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, Noah was immediately startled. This was because in front of Noah, a young and cute face was incomparably close. A pair of emerald green eyes were staring at Noah with curiosity. Oh. Mavis blinked. You're finally back? First generation. Noah hurriedly retreated a few steps, creating a distance between him and Mavis. However, Mavis seemed to not want to let Noah escape and closed in on Noah. Hey. Mavis was like a curious child. While closing in on Noah, she impatiently asked, where did you go before? I searched the entire Skywolf Island and couldn't find you. Hearing this, Noah was puzzled by Mavis' question and curiosity at first, but then he realized. Before leaving this world, Mavis had used one of the 3 great spells of the fairy tale, called the Fairy Sphere, to freeze the entire Skywolf Island. This was an absolute defense spell that could even freeze time. In a situation where he couldn't break through it, where could Noah go? In the end, Mavis was stunned that she couldn't find Noah in the vicinity of the Skywolf Island. No wonder Mavis was so curious. However, Noah didn't answer Mavis' question and instead looked around. At this moment, Noah was on the beach of the Skywolf Island. Outside there was a boundless sky and sea. As for the barrier of the fairy sphere, it had long since disappeared. As expected, the absolute defense spell has been removed? Noah muttered. 7 years have already passed outside? Mavis had said that if he wanted to remove the power of the fairy sphere, he would have to spend 7 years. Now, since the barrier of the fairy sphere could no longer be seen, it proved that this super spell had already been removed. Therefore, 7 years should have passed in this world. To be exact, it should be 7 years and a month? Mavis corrected. Since the power of the fairy sphere was removed, a month has already passed. This explanation wasn't out of Noah's expectations. It wasn't something that was hard to understand, because time was frozen and needed 7 years to unfreeze. When 7 years had passed in the outside world, only a moment had passed in the Skywolf Island. At that time, Noah, who was on the Skywolf Island, had chosen to leave this world and head to another world. And when Noah descended into this world again, at least a month would have passed in this world. If the time on the Skywolf Island had been frozen, a month wouldn't have passed. Therefore, it was only natural that when time began to flow on Heavenly Wolf Island again, it would be when the fairy sphere was removed and 7 years had passed in the outside world. Under these circumstances, Noah once again arrived on the Skywolf Island a month later. That would naturally be 7 years and a month in the outside world. Then what about grandfather and the others? Noah somewhat hurriedly asked Mavis. What about the frozen companions of the fairy tale on this island? They left a month ago. Mavis answered Noah's question with a lively and cheerful voice. At that time, because they couldn't find you, Makarov and those children thought that something had happened to you during your battle with Akonarolia. They almost went to the Black Dragon of Silent Revelation. Then what happened afterwards? Noah asked. What happened afterwards? Afterwards, I told them that you had some matters to attend to and that nothing had happened. Only then did they feel at ease and leave the Skywolf Island and return to the guild. Mavis said with a beaming smile. Therefore you have to thank me. Noah let out a sigh of relief and smiled gratefully at Mavis. Thank you, first generation. After saying this, Noah subconsciously reached out with his hand, wanting to pat Mavis' head. However, at this moment, Mavis seemed to have been electrocuted and fiercely jumped away, looking at Noah with a face full of fear. You mustn't touch me. Noah stared blankly for a moment before remembering and smiling embarrassedly. I'm sorry, I forgot that you're a specter and can't touch you. No, that's not the problem. Mavis shook her head and frowned, looking at Noah with an extremely serious expression. Isn't your physique able to eliminate the power of any magic? For an existence like me that doesn't even have a physical body, if I were to be touched by you, I wonder if I would also be eliminated. Noah scratched his cheek. That's impossible, right? I've never heard of a resistance to curses being able to eliminate the existence of specters. For an existence like me, I don't even know what kind of recognition will be given to me. If I'm considered to be an existence similar to magic or related to magic, then it's not impossible for you to eliminate me. Mavis shook her head without any room for discussion as she puffed up her cheeks. Moreover, I'm an elder. Casually touching an elder's head is an impolite thing to do. Elder, huh? Noah looked at the angry Mavis with an extremely strange expression as he muttered to himself, Don't worry, Mavis. No matter how you look at it, I'm the older one, right? Mavis looked at Noah angrily. You just said something impolite, didn't you? No, nothing like that. Noah laughed dryly and hurriedly changed the topic. Since everyone has gone back, it's better for me to hurry back as well. I don't know what has become of Fairy Tale. After losing their main force for 7 years, I'm afraid that Fairy Tale has already encountered a lot of problems, right? Thinking of this, Noah could no longer sit still. Go. Mavis smiled tolerantly. Remember to send my regards to everyone in the guild. Noah nodded heavily and looked towards the ocean, slowly clenching his fist. He hoped that the guild would be safe. Chapter 1632. Fiori Kingdom, Villa Magnolia. Compared to 7 years ago, Magnolia was neither prosperous nor weak. It was still the same as before, as if nothing had changed at all. It was bustling with activity. On the streets, people were walking back and forth. Around them, there were shouts and hawking sounds coming from the stalls. People were laughing and chatting with each other, or patronizing the stalls. The noise was constant, revealing a vibrant vitality. This scene made people feel unusually warm. However, walking on this street, Noah frowned slightly. It was not that he felt uncomfortable, but the conversation of the people around him caught Noah's attention. Did you hear? The main members of Fairy Tale seem to have returned? Main members? That's right. Don't tell me you've forgotten that 7 years ago, the main members of Fairy Tale went missing after they went out to sea? Oh, I remember now. There was indeed such a thing. I heard that the missing members seemed to have returned a month ago. So that means that the guild is preparing to rise again? How can that trash guild rise again? Even if the main members are back, what can they do? It has already been 7 years, right? Well, that's true. A trash guild will always be a trash guild. Yeah. Noah's frown deepened as he listened to the conversation. There was a hint of anger and helplessness in his dark and deep eyes. Sure enough, 7 years will definitely cause problems. Noah was already mentally prepared for this. However, after confirming this, Noah's mood was both helpless and relieved. He was helpless because this result did not change. As for the sigh of relief, it was naturally because of the news about Fairy Tale. Although he did not know the current situation of Fairy Tale, but from the conversation of these people, the guild seemed to still be alive. As long as the guild was still alive, it was fine. Now Noah clearly knew what kind of existence he was, and what kind of fate he had to bear. Under such circumstances, if Fairy Tale did not exist, then Noah really did not know what would become of him. Fortunately, the worst thing did not happen. However, even if the worst did not happen, from the conversations of the people around him, he could tell that Fairy Tale was not in good condition. He wondered how his former companions were doing now. At the thought of this, Noah couldn't help but quicken his pace as he headed in the direction of the Fairy Tale Guild. Under the illumination of the sun, the signboard of the Fairy Tale Guild flashed with a dazzling light. A flag with the guild emblem of Fairy Tale fluttered in the wind at the top of the castle-like building, silently announcing to the world that the guild that was once the #1 guild in the kingdom of Fiori was still alive and kicking. Noah directly walked into the guild and pushed open the door. If it was in the past, all the noises that belonged to Fairy Tale would have immediately entered Noah's ears. However, this time such noises did not ring out. This was because the entire hall of Fairy Tale was extremely empty. There was not a single person in sight. Noah's expression immediately darkened. He silently lifted his foot and walked into it. Tap, 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 tap. The clear sound of footsteps reverberated in the air, bringing about a lonely atmosphere. This was something that would never have happened in the previous Fairy Tale. But now Noah felt like he was the only person in the world, and a sense of loneliness rose in his heart. This feeling of loneliness was broken in the next second by a voice. "Noah?" A trembling voice rang out. Hearing this voice, Noah's footsteps paused, and he immediately turned his head to look at the source of the voice. In the next moment, 2 figures appeared in front of Noah's eyes. They were 2 middle-aged men who were at least 40 years old. At this moment, these 2 middle-aged men were looking at Noah with an expression of disbelief. Their eyes were brimming with tears, as if they were in disbelief. Looking at the 2 middle-aged men, Noah hesitated for a moment, and spoke with uncertainty. "Are you Makao and Wakaba?" After hearing Noah's words, the 2 middle-aged men finally believed what they had seen. "You're back, Noah." Makao was overjoyed. "That's great. You're finally back. President and the others didn't see you when they came back, so we thought something had happened to you." Wakaba was also overjoyed. "Looks like you're safe, that's great." Seeing Makao and Wakaba's joyous expressions, Noah's heart finally felt full. No matter what changes had happened to Fairy Tale, the only thing that mattered to him was the feeling of caring for his companions. Even after 7 years, it still hadn't changed. "You're all old." Noah first sighed. Then he thought of something and hurriedly asked, "Right, where's everyone in the guild?" Just as these words were spoken, an aged voice that was filled with surprise and joy rang out. "Oh, Noah, you're back." Along with this voice, a short and old figure slowly walked out from the inner section of the guild. It was Makarov. "Grandfather." Noah's heart suddenly calmed down. "Where have you been?" Makarov said reproachfully. "I've been gone for a month." Mira and Lisanna were worried to death. Makarov's words elicited an extremely strong reaction from Makarov and Wakaba. "President, you haven't seen Noah for a month, but we haven't seen him for 7 years and 1 month. Yes, you're just worried, but we were once in despair." From Makao's and Wakaba's voices, Noah could clearly hear the excitement in their voices. That was true. To Makarov, Noah had only been missing for a month. However, to those who stayed in Fairy Tale, Noah had been missing for 7 years and 1 month. How could they not be excited? Fortunately, the members of Celestial Wolf Island Group had already returned a month ago. Otherwise, who knows how excited Makao and Wakaba would be at this moment. "No matter what, it's good that you're fine." Noah was relieved. Even after 7 years, the guild still hasn't changed. Noah said this from the bottom of his heart. However, Makao and Wakaba refuted him. "That's where you're wrong, Noah." Makao sighed. The guild has changed a lot. Didn't you notice that the members of the guild aren't here? Wakaba said helplessly. Apart from your Celestial Wolf Island group, there are less than 10 people left. The rest have all left the guild. So it's like that. Noah sighed faintly. It was natural for the guild to encounter such a situation. After all, if the main force wasn't here, how could the guild continue to be the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom? Without the main force, there wouldn't be any powerful magic shooters to complete the difficult missions. This way, the missions would decrease, the income would decrease, the management wouldn't be good, and the members would leave. Anyway, sit down first. Makarov looked at Noah. I'll tell you the details of the guild. Noah nodded. Chapter 1633. During these 7 years, many things had happened to Fairy Tail. Due to the need to remove the ice on Heavenly Wolf Island, Mavis had sunk the entire island to the bottom of the sea to prevent any disturbances or trouble. The disappearance of Heavenly Wolf Island was finally discovered a month after Noah's group left the guild. At the same time, the news of Heavenly Wolf Island being attacked by the Black Dragon Achinalia, who had destroyed a country in silent revelation, had also spread throughout the continent. Fairy Tail, who thought that the main members of the guild in Heavenly Wolf Island had been destroyed by Achinalia, fell into chaos and despair. In the end, all kinds of problems arose. For example, after knowing that the main members of the guild were no longer around, the number of requests for Fairy Tail became fewer and fewer, making it difficult for the guild to operate. Another example was the remnants of the Dark Guild and the magic order that had been annihilated by the Fairy Tail. They had also come knocking on the door and launched more than one attack. Facing all of this, the guild's situation worsened by the day, and finally, the guild's members began to withdraw. Now, aside from the main members who had met with misfortune on Heavenly Wolf Island, the guild only had less than 10 members left. Fortunately, Noah had a bad premonition before leaving for Heavenly Wolf Island. He had squandered all of his wealth to purchase large amounts of magic crystals and gave them to Makao, Wakaba, and the others for them to use when necessary. It was precisely because of these magic crystals that Fairy Tail was able to activate the runic defense system that Noah had left in the guild, blocking the attacks of many dark guilds and magic order. Not only that, when the guild was in a financial crisis, Makao and Wakaba had sold off a portion of the magic crystals and earned a lot of money, allowing Fairy Tail to survive until now. If not for those magic crystals, even if Fairy Tail was still around, they would still be in debt. They might not even be able to protect the guild building. The magic crystals you left behind gave the guild a chance to breathe. A trace of turbidity appeared in Makarov's eyes. On the other hand, as the guild leader, I didn't leave anything behind, causing the members of the guild to suffer greatly. Back then, I only thought that something would happen. I didn't expect something like this to happen. Noah shook his head. It's really great that I left something behind back then. You've been a great help, Noah. Makao patted Noah's shoulder. In these 7 years, I have more than once felt admiration and gratitude for your foresight. If it weren't for those magic crystals, our guild would have long since fallen into poverty, right? Wakaba bit his pipe as he exhaled a puff of white smoke. Even though, right now, our guild is also very poor and very weak, that's right. In the past, Noah had long since used up all the magic crystals he had left behind. Coupled with the withdrawal of a large number of members, Fairy Tail had really fallen into a state of poverty. If Noah's group still hadn't returned, Makao and Wakaba would have had no choice but to borrow money from others. They might have even sold the guild building, right? No matter what, the members of the Heavenly Wolf group had returned at just the right time. It's really great that we didn't sell the guild building. Makao nearly cried. Otherwise, as the 4th-generation guild leader, I wouldn't have the face to meet you. You only became the guild leader because no one in the guild had more experience than you. You don't have to talk about it all the time. Wakaba unhesitatingly tore down Makao's mask. Now that the guild leader and Noah have returned, do you think you still have a share in the guild leader's position? Shut up. Of course I know that. Makao flew into a rage out of humiliation. I'm just saying it for fun. Can't I? The 2 veteran members immediately started arguing in front of Makarov and Noah. Noah and Makarov didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but at the same time, they let the 2 go. Since everyone has returned, where are the others? Noah looked at Makarov. Why don't I see anyone? Right, you still don't know about this matter. Makarov finally remembered this matter. He picked up a glass of wine and took a swig as he explained, "That's right. Everyone went to cultivate." Cultivate? Noah was surprised, but immediately understood. So that's how it is. Are you planning to get back the 7 years of blank time? In this era, the main members of Fairy Tail were still as strong as they were 7 years ago. In other words, everyone else had obtained 7 years of growth time. Only the main members of Fairy Tail didn't have the slightest bit of growth in these 7 years. I'm afraid that Naz, Gray, and the others who were able to occupy the first line of combat power in Fairy Tail have already been reduced to the level of slightly stronger magic shooters in this era. If they didn't cultivate properly and got back the 7 years of blank time, even if the main members returned, there wouldn't be many people who would entrust them with difficult tasks. This was also the reason why people thought that even if the main members returned, Fairy Tail would still be a trash guild. Now, Fairy Tail is no longer the #1 guild in the kingdom. Instead, it has become an existence at the bottom. Makao complained. For example, Lamia Scale and Blue Pegasus have now far surpassed us. Especially Lamia Scale. They are now the #2 guild in the kingdom. They are much stronger than us. No matter what in Lamia Scale, there is still a Tura. Wakaba shrugged. They have a member of the top 10 Saint Magicians and a combat expert like Leo. It's impossible for them not to be strong. #2 in the kingdom. Noah noticed another detail. Then, who is the #1 in the kingdom? I heard that it was a very small guild 7 years ago. Makarov said with an indifferent attitude as he continued to drink his wine. However, that guild changed its leader in these 7 years and also brought in 5 very powerful magic shooters. As a result, it developed to the point where it is now the #1 guild in the kingdom. In other words, it's that guild that replaced us, right? Noah looked at Makao. What is that guild called? The guild is called Sabertooth. They are very powerful. Makao stroked his chin. In my opinion, that guild is much stronger than when we were at our peak 7 years ago. Not to mention Sabertooth, even Lamia Scale, and Blue Pegasus are much stronger than we were in the past. Wakaba said with annoyance. At least I don't think that we can fight them after training for a few months. Yes. Makao nodded. Even if it is Noah, I don't think he can do anything to them now. A gap of 7 years is too serious. Wakaba said jokingly to Makarov. Leader, why don't we learn from Sabertooth and change the leader? Maybe we can return to our peak in a short time? Wakaba's words made Makarov stop drinking and narrow his eyes. You reminded me. Makao and Wakaba were startled. At this time, Makarov suddenly said to Noah, "Let me show you something." Noah was also stunned. Something? What thing? Chapter 1634. Magnoria Fairy Tale Guild. This was the underground of the guild. Under Makarov's lead, Noah walked down the stairs in the dim tunnel. Looking at Makarov, who was leading the way, Noah hesitated for a moment before he chose to speak. Grandpa, what are you going to show me? Makarov didn't turn around or answer. He just kept walking down the stairs. After a while Makarov spoke. On Sirius Island you once brought back a young man, right? Makarov's words made Noah's expression freeze slightly. That young man seems to be the black magician Jerf who existed 400 years ago. Makarov's voice became solemn. Is this true? I don't know. Noah shook his head. But Hades did call him Jerf. If that person said so, then it's true. Makarov smiled bitterly. As expected, Jerf has always been cursed by God and managed to survive. His words made Noah raise his eyebrows in surprise. Grandpa, you know that Jerf has been cursed by God? Not only do I know that Jerf has been cursed by God, but I also know the true form of the curse on him, Makarov said in a deep voice. That is the curse of the god of Anxalam. God of Anxalam. Noah was stunned. Anxalam is the god of life and death, Makarov said. 400 years ago, because Jerf conducted research on life and death, he seriously violated the domain of the god of Anxalam and was cursed by that god. That is an ancient curse called the curse of contradiction. Makarov's voice became extremely solemn. If the person who receives this curse respects life, then he will take away the lives of those around him. The more he respects life, the more the curse will release the energy of death, causing a lot of deaths and injuries around the cursed person. On the other hand, if he doesn't respect life, then he won't release the energy of death. That is why it is called the curse of contradiction. And this curse, in addition to taking away the lives of others, can also give the cursed person an immortal life. Makarov sighed. The reason Jerf was able to survive 400 years ago is because of the power of this curse, right? Noah suddenly recalled the scene when he met Jerf on Sirius Island. At that time, Jerf did release a huge amount of energy of death, causing the life around him to be devoured. At that time, apart from Noah and Wendy, who was protected by Noah, all the life around them was taken away. Is that the curse of the god of Enxalam? Noah couldn't help but mutter. What a vile curse. The curse would only take away the lives of others if it respected life. Didn't that mean that the more the cursed person cherished others, the more he would take away the lives of those he cherished? Such a vicious curse could no longer be described as a bad taste. The reason why Jerf was so desperate and agitated to beg Noah to kill him was because he was tortured by this curse, right? Moreover, the most vicious black magic shooter in history was someone who respected life. That was equally shocking. If it wasn't because he respected life, then Jerf wouldn't have triggered the energy of death on Sirius Island that almost affected Noah, right? What a vile hobby! Makarov heard Noah's mutterings clearly. After a moment of silence, Makarov spoke calmly. The first generation was also cursed by that vile hobby. Noah suddenly raised his head and looked at Makarov in shock. What did Makarov say just now? The first generation was cursed as well? Was he cursed by the god of Enxalam? It can't be, right? That was before the creation of Fairy Tale. Makarov didn't seem to know how shocked Noah was at this moment. He continued to walk down the stairs and began to tell his story. He continued to walk down the stairs. 100 years ago, the first generation was just a member of a small guild. At that time, the magical world wasn't as orderly as it is now. There were all sorts of conflicts and even killings between guilds in order to fight for territory, resources, and commissions. This made the era very chaotic. Makarov's voice rang clearly in the passage. At that time, the guild that the first generation was in was destroyed because of a dispute. The first generation then wandered to Sirius Island and lived there. After that, the first generation met 3 treasure hunters who came to Sirius Island to look for treasures. They left Sirius Island together and came to Magnolia. Makarov paused slightly. Along the way, the first generation and the 3 treasure hunters met an incredible black magic shooter and learned magic from him. Black magic shooter. Noah's eyes began to sparkle. That so-called black magic shooter should be Jeffrey, right? Did that mean that the first generation learned his magic from Jerf? This was yet another shocking fact. At that time, Magnolia was under the control of a dark guild, and the lives of the people were very difficult. Makarov continued. In order to save Magnolia from the hands of the Dark Guild, the first generation used an incomplete black magic. In the end, he paid the price of his body being unable to grow. So, the reason why the first generation's body was so petite was because of this? After that, the first generation and the 3 treasure hunters created Fairy Tale and became the 4 founders of Fairy Tale. Makarov glanced at Noah. Among them, there was Hades, whom you defeated. In addition, my father, your great-grandfather, Euridoria, was also among them. After that, everything in Fairy Tale was on the right track. The first generation also worked hard on various activities for the development of Fairy Tale. Makarov closed his eyes. Until one day the first generation met Jerf again and learned something from him. Hearing this, Noah understood. Seems like you've guessed it. Makarov's voice sounded a little old. That's right, the first generation's body didn't stop growing. Instead, like Jerf, he was cursed by the god of Enxalam and became immortal. But isn't that a little strange? Noah couldn't help but ask. Since he's immortal, why did the first generation die? That's because the god of Enxalam's curse will cause those who cherish their lives to harm those around them. In order not to harm his companions in the guild, the first generation left the guild, found Jerf, and asked him to kill him, Makarov explained. But Jerf asked the first generation to kill him if there was a way. As 2 people with immortal lives, both the first generation and Jerf couldn't kill each other. Because of that, they were heartbroken that each other didn't cherish their own lives. Makarov shook his head and sighed. In the end, this action triggered the curse of the god of Angsalam, who both respected each other's lives to the greatest extent, causing the two of them to start taking each other's lives at the same time. Take each other's lives at the same time? Noah frowned. But the first generation and Jerf are both immortal, right? They can't be killed, right? That's right. Makarov nodded. Therefore, the curse of contradiction created an even greater contradiction, allowing the side with the stronger curse to take away the other side's life that should have been immortal. In other words, only one of them died in the end. There was no need to explain who that person was. That was how the first generation was killed by Jerf's curse. Chapter 1635. In the dim passageway, a silent atmosphere began to pervade. Noah and Makarov were still walking down the stairs, and the atmosphere seemed a little heavy. Noah lowered his head slightly as he pondered over the secret that Makarov told him. At the same time, he smiled bitterly to himself. Who would have thought that in less than a day, he would actually learn so many secrets? Noah only found out about his real identity and mission today, including the secrets and disasters of the many worlds in between worlds. Now, after returning to the guild, he found out about such secrets in fairy tale. If it weren't for Noah's strong mental fortitude, he wouldn't have been able to digest so many things in such a short time. And that wasn't the end of it. Makarov intended to tell Noah's secrets, and that wasn't all. Everyone thought that the first bloodline had passed away, Makarov said abruptly. But, in fact, the first bloodline didn't really die at that time. Noah was stunned on the spot, and he didn't know how to react. What's going on? Makarov seemed to have seen through Noah's confusion and explained the truth. At that time, the first bloodline was only in a state of suspended animation. His heart was still beating. Jerf sent the first bloodline, who was in a state of suspended animation, back to fairy tale. At that time, the second-generation guild leader Precito, also known as Hades, discovered that the first bloodline wasn't dead, so he used the magic crystal in the guild's basement to revive the first bloodline. This attempt ended in failure. Speaking of this, Makarov clenched his fists with a heavy expression. However, Hades lived up to his reputation as a genius who was closest to the demonic abyss. Although his attempt ended in failure, he unexpectedly developed a magic spell that transcended eras by using the first generation's body that was sealed in a magic crystal and possessed the semi-permanent life support ability of the first generation. The three great spells above fairy tale, fairy law, fairy glitter, and fairy sphere. Makarov said word by word. That is the permanent spell, fairy heart. Fairy heart? Noah muttered softly. There was shock and astonishment in his voice. A spell developed from the semi-permanent life support ability of the first bloodline? Only the guild masters of fairy tale knew about the existence of that spell. We also called it Lumen Starlight, Makarov reminded him. You should still remember when Hades came to Magnolia and spent a lot of effort to kidnap our guild members, right? Of course, Noah remembered this matter. After all, at that time, Hades specially came to Magnolia because of Noah and spent a lot of effort to kidnap the members of Fairy Tale, forcing Noah to come out of town. At that time, the reason why Hades didn't dare to attack Magnolia directly and chose to go to such great lengths was because he was wary of the existence of Lumen Starlight, Makarov said. As long as that is there, no matter what kind of enemy we face, we have a chance of winning. Even if it's Jerv and Akonarolia, it's the same. Makarov's words made Noah more or less silent. So there was such a trump card in Fairy Tale? But there was no way for others to know about it. Not to mention other things, just the Lumen Starlight itself was developed with Mavis' body as the center, and the principle of its establishment was because Mavis had been cursed by Angsalam. If this matter was spread out, it would definitely affect the entire fairy tale. Right? Moreover, this permanent spell was developed with Mavis' body, which was equivalent to a human experiment. If the council knew about this matter, then fairy tale would very likely be banned. Not to mention if Lumen Starlight was really a magic that could defeat even Jerf and Akonarolia, then it would definitely attract the covetous eyes of all kinds of people, making fairy tale a target of public criticism all of a sudden. Apart from that, the various secrets related to Lumen Starlight would also cause all kinds of trouble. For example, if the world knew that the founders of fairy tale, like Mavis, Hades and Yuri had learned magic from the fiercest dark mage in history. It was not impossible to report Fairy Tail and have the council demote Fairy Tail to a dark guild. So this was a secret that only the guild leaders of each generation knew about, right? And now, since Makarov had told this important matter to Noah, it could only mean one thing. "Grandfather," Noah said with a complicated expression, "are you preparing to retire? Because of the magic crystals you left behind, Fairy Tail was given a chance to breathe in these 7 years, which proved that you were far-sighted." Makarov was silent for a while, then sighed. "This old man is already old, and my grandson is so outstanding. It is time for me to retire." Noah opened his mouth, but in the end, he did not say anything. Just like what Makarov said, he was already old. If possible, Noah also hoped that Makarov would be able to enjoy his old age in peace and not have to worry about the guild's matters. He would be able to enjoy the happiness of his family at home. As for the guild, it was not like Noah had never been the leader of a guild. Was he afraid that he would not be able to do it? However, Noah did not know how long he would be able to be the guild leader. After all, not long after, Noah would also have to fight against the disasters that threatened the various worlds. At that time, if he succeeded, then it would not matter. If he failed, then Noah would be destroyed by Shadow, along with the myriad of worlds. Since that was the case, then there was no need to be calculative. If he won, then he would return to being the guild leader. If he lost, then he would disappear together. It did not matter how long it would last. Thus, Noah nodded heavily. "I understand, Grandpa." The heaviness and vicissitudes of life on Makarov's face finally faded, and he smiled with some relief. "Well, you don't have to worry. For the time being, I will stay in this position for a while. When there is a chance, I will announce this matter." While talking, the two finally arrived at the underground. At the end of the stairs, there was a palace that was not too vast. After passing through this palace, a door appeared in front of Noah and Makarov. Boom! With a heavy thud, the door slowly opened. What appeared in front of Noah was a vast basement. The basement was very empty. Only in front of them stood a huge crystal. And in that crystal, a young girl like a fairy was floating inside, naked. Her eyes were closed and her face was serene. She was like a sleeping beauty, very beautiful. "That is Lumen Starlight." Makarov looked up at the crystal and said very solemnly, "It symbolizes infinity, the eternal magic that can produce inexhaustible magic, fairy heart. Now I entrust it to you." Makarov looked at Noah, and his voice was unprecedentedly serious. "I hope you can guard it well and use it properly." Noah looked at the girl in the crystal and nodded silently. Chapter 1636. In the basement, a huge crystal shone in the darkness. Inside the crystal, a naked, seductive girl with her eyes closed was suspended in the air. That scene was both beautiful and sacred, causing others to be unable to produce the slightest trace of evil thoughts. After explaining everything, Makarov had already left. Thus, Noah was the only one left in the entire basement. Looking at Mavis floating within the resplendent crystal, he softly muttered, "Fairy heart." It symbolized infinity, and was able to unleash eternal magic that would never run out. With this, even if I wanted to have everything, it wouldn't be difficult, right? Why was the third perpetual motion machine called the crystallization of dreams? It was because it could create infinite energy out of nothing. With the third perpetual motion machine, not to mention wealth, it was not impossible to create weapons that could destroy the world. Therefore, the third perpetual motion machine that was abused by malicious people would become a factor that led to the end of humanity, making Azdakaha the final trial of humanity. It was the same principle. For this world that had integrated magic into life, magic was an energy source, and could be said to be everything. With the ability to use eternal magic that would never run out, it would be easy to get whatever you wanted. However, like the third perpetual motion machine, this perpetual magic was a double-edged sword. If it was used well, it would naturally be able to unleash unimaginable miraculous effects. But if it was not used well, it would definitely be the same as the third perpetual motion machine that led to the end of humanity, becoming a factor that would destroy humanity. The existence that was related to infinity was basically like this, always influencing the direction of the world and humanity. In the world of Demon High School, the infinite dragon god Orpheus, who was above everyone, was like this. In the world where problem children came from another world, the third perpetual motion machine that became a factor of humanity's final trial was like this. In this world, the fairy heart, which symbolized infinity, was the same. Even if Noah had the third perpetual motion machine, didn't he also have the ability to influence the direction of this world and human society? The principle was the same. So, grandfather was right, if this thing was exposed, it would only be a disaster, right? Noah's heart was determined. If that's the case, it's not safe for it to stay here. No one knew that in fairy tale there was such a basement. The entrance had always been sealed. Only Noah and Makarov knew how to enter. Logically speaking, it should be safe for Lumen Starlight to stay here. However, no one could say for sure when it would be found. Rather than that, it is better to keep it by my side. After all, in this world, there was no safer place than staying by Noah's side. Although Noah had left his authority, sovereignty, grace, and even his treasure vault in the space between worlds, Noah's power was enough to deal with all enemies in this world. With the third perpetual motion machine, Noah's magic power, physical strength, and even mental strength had reached an unlimited level. With Noah's inexhaustible magic power like Lumen Starlight, once he used the strengthening magic, even if it could not strengthen his physical strength to the same level as when he had the ability value, it would certainly not be worse than Hercules in the current world in the form of a servant. In addition, Aster had recovered the power that even the Elven King, who was a world elemental, feared. Athena was also the incarnation of the Sword of Salvation. With Noah's power, if used with unlimited divine power, the power was definitely enough to destroy the gods. Therefore, even if the power, sovereignty, grace, and treasury were all left in between the worlds, Noah still had the power to enter the 4-digit ranks in the box. In this world, the power of the sorcerers could not be compared to the Shura gods in the box. At least, in Noah's view, S-level sorcerers like Alusha and Mira were probably at the bottom of the 5-digit ranks. The 10 great sorcerers were probably also in the 5-digit ranks, but there was still a big gap between them and the top 5-digit ranks of the gods. As for Jerf, the most vicious sorcerer in history, it was possible for him to be at the top of the 5-digit ranks, right? In Noah's memory, in this world, the only existence that could reach the 4-digit ranks was the Black Dragon, Iconarolia, who destroyed a country in Revelation. That was also the only existence that could pose a threat to the current Noah, right? In that case, Lumen Starlight was in Noah's hands, was it not safe? In view of this, Noah immediately decided how to deal with Lumen Starlight. Clang! With a flash, a dark gold card appeared in Noah's hand. It was the gift card. Because the gate of Babylon was left in between worlds, Noah only had 4 items with him. 1. 2 elven magic equipment. 2. A necklace with the effect of flight. 3. A ring that was condensed from the magic book of the Pied Piper of Hamel, and was connected to Pest's life. 4. A gift card that could be summoned at will. Without the gate of Babylon, if one wanted to carry a magic crystal that was taller than a person, one could only use the gift card to store it. The gift card could store gifts. Other than gifts, it could also store food, water, clothes, and other daily necessities. If it's magic, it should be able to be treated as a gift and stored. Noah raised the gift card up high. The dark gold gift card instantly emitted a dazzling light that enveloped the huge magic crystal. The huge magic crystal that sealed the fairy-like beautiful girl immediately turned into a ray of light and was stored into the gift card. Noah smiled with satisfaction and allowed the gift card to disappear into the air. Then he turned around and left the basement. After 100 years, Mavis' body finally left the dark basement. After leaving the basement, Noah returned to the guild. In the guild, there were still only 3 people, Makarov, and Wakaba. By the way, Noah, I have something to tell you, Makarov immediately said when he saw Noah appear. In the next 2 months, you should work hard on your cultivation, and prepare to participate in the Great Demonic Battle Exhibition in 2 months. Great Demonic Battle Exhibition? Noah was slightly startled. What's that? In the years that you weren't around, the Fiori Kingdom had an annual ceremony to determine the guild rankings. Makarov spoke first. That is the real hell. Noah, you must not participate. Hell? Noah was curious. Why do you say that? Because, Wakaba said in a melancholy tone. In the past, when we participated, we were always last place. Is that so? Noah raised an eyebrow. So in the past, Saber-tooth was first place? That's right, Makarov said loudly. This time we will also participate and become the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom once again. With that, Makao and Wakaba immediately opened their mouths. Impossible. It's impossible. Ignoring Makarov and Wakaba, Makarov continued. Naz and the others are cultivating because of this matter. They have already been cultivating for a month. In 2 months, the Great Demonic Battle Exhibition will begin. After saying this, Makarov looked at Noah. How is it? Noah, will you participate? Hearing this, Noah smiled. Of course, although he didn't know what kind of guild Saber-tooth was. But in Noah's heart, Fairy Tail would always be #1. If Fairy Tail isn't #1, then I will make it #1. This sentence made Makarov and Wakaba speechless. Makarov laughed out loud. Chapter 1637. On the sunny mountain path, flocks of birds chirped like a melody, constantly reverberating in the sky. On the mountain path, Noah was walking up step by step, heading towards the summit. Grandpa was talking about this mountain, right? While walking, Noah looked around and smiled with some nostalgia. In the past, I also cultivated in this area, Yifutian said. In order to participate in the Great Magic Battle Exhibition 2 months later, Noah also left the guild and prepared to train for a period of time. Although in Noah's view in this world, apart from Akonarolia, there should be no one else who could threaten him, but rather than hiding in the guild for 2 months, Noah still chose to come out and train. Of course, the current Noah didn't have to endure hardships for several years like before in order to learn magic. This time, Noah only intended to train his energy control. Ever since I got the 3rd perpetual motion machine spirit, although I have unlimited energy, too much energy has instead caused problems in control. Noah thought silently. If I can control more energy, then the portion that can be used at one time will also increase, right? In the past, because he was worried that too much energy would cause his body to explode, Noah could only forge an energy source to accommodate too much energy. He also didn't dare to use too much energy at one time, which was the so-called problem of exertion. But ever since he got the 3rd perpetual motion machine spirit, Noah's body could hold unlimited energy, and could also use unlimited energy, no longer worrying about exertion. In other words, Noah's exertion also became unlimited. However, if the energy used was not controlled well, it would still cause damage to the body, as well as the mysterious runaway. This problem, when he was a child, Noah was troubled by it. Therefore, Noah understood that if he didn't properly train his energy control, even if he had unlimited energy, it would only cause a destructive disaster to the surroundings. When I was a child, my mana went out of control, and I almost destroyed the guild. Noah couldn't help but be speechless. If the current me were to go berserk with the unlimited energy in my body, the entire continent would be destroyed, right? For this reason, Noah needed to retrain his energy control. As long as Noah could control more energy without worrying about the problem of output and consumption, the more energy he could control, the more his strength would increase proportionally. For example, if one could use more mana, the power of magic and spells would increase. Another example was that the more divine power one could use, the more powerful the elven device would be. Now, consumption and exertion were no longer a problem that troubled Noah. The only problem that really troubled Noah was the amount of energy he could use at one time. Fortunately, this problem could be solved with diligence. It would be great if there was a strong enough opponent for me to practice with, Noah thought with regret. It had to be known that Noah, as a human, was also a godslayer. The stronger the opponent, the more he could improve his strength. In the past, Noah had fought many strong people in the box court, including the final trial of Absolute Evil and Closed World, which allowed him to improve a lot. Among them, there was an improvement in his control of energy. Unfortunately, in this world, no one was qualified to be Noah's opponent except for Akonarolia. Incompetent opponents, no matter how many of them there were, would only be a negligible improvement to Noah. In the end, I can only rely on diligence. Diligence was diligence, but Noah didn't need to be nervous about anything now. With Noah's current strength, it was enough to deal with all the enemies in this world. The reason why he chose to be diligent was because he didn't want to waste these 2 months. And if possible, of course I want to train with my future wives and spend these 2 months together. Noah raised his head and looked in the direction of the mountain top, an expectant smile unconsciously appearing on his face. Mira and Lisanna are there, right? After Noah decided to train, Makarov told Noah the whereabouts of Mira and Lisanna. Noah came to this mountain because of this reason. It's just that I didn't expect that they would be training here. With this thought, Noah continued to walk in the direction of the mountain top. At this time, in the direction of the mountain top, a violent explosion suddenly shook, causing flames and dust to sweep up at the same time. Noah looked at the sudden explosion on the mountain top with a surprised expression, then smiled slightly. It seems that they are indeed training hard. Leaving such a sentence, Noah didn't waste any more time. He directly floated up and flew in the direction of the mountain top. Not long after Noah arrived at the mountain top, a violent explosion occurred again, causing waves of fire to shake out like a storm, rushing in all directions. And in the flames, 3 figures were crisscrossing and crisscrossing. Among them, a figure rushed into the sky, directly rushed out of the waves of fire, spread a pair of wings and flew up. It was a girl wearing revealing tights. Her arms were like the hands of a devil covered in scales, looking very ferocious, a pair of bat-like wings on her back, a tail like a crocodile, and hair straight to the sky, looking very evil. Impressively, it was Mira who used the receiving magic to receive the devil's soul of Satan. At this time, Mira was completely without her usual gentle and considerate appearance, transforming into a terrifying devil. A pitch-black energy light flashed in her hand, converging into the shape of a ball, raised high above her head, and fiercely threw it down. Whoosh! The pitch-black magic light suddenly turned into a meteorite, falling from the sky, carrying a sharp sound of breaking through the air, and in the vibration of the atmosphere, violently shot down to the waves of fire below. It's coming! A real man! In the waves of fire, 2 voices sounded in succession. The 2 voices belonged to Lisanna and Elfman. The 3 siblings of the Strauss family came to this mountain together and began to cultivate. Like Mira, Lisanna and Elfman both used the receiving magic. However, Mira received the soul of a devil, Lisanna received the soul of an animal, and Elfman received the soul of a demon. Thus, Lisanna received the soul of a cat, wearing a cat-like fur top and bottom, growing cat ears on her head, a cat tail on her back, and a pair of hands turned into cat claws, her figure nimbly leaping away. As for Elfman, he seemed to have received the soul of some kind of demonic creature, and one of his arms became extremely hideous and terrifying like a lizard's arm. He threw a punch at the ball of mana that was shooting towards him. Accompanied by an explosive sound, the pitch-black magic light exploded in front of Elfman's ferocious fist, setting off a shocking impact and flames. In the midst of the explosion, Elfman flew backwards like an arrow from a bow, fiercely smashing into a rock, causing cracks to appear on the rock. One could only imagine how much power Mira had used in that attack. "Brother Elfman!" Lisanna cried out in shock, then froze on the spot. Mira had appeared behind Lisanna at some point and raised her hand, facing Lisanna's back, gathering pitch-black magic light in her hand. "Wait! Sister Mira, wait!" Lisanna hurriedly raised her hand. "We surrender." The magic gathered in Mira's hand slowly dissipated as she sighed with a cold expression. "Really, the 2 of you? One only knows how to fight force with force and doesn't know how to dodge at all. The other is always distracted by big and small matters. If this continues, in 2 months you'll be suppressed by others." Ugh! Lisanna was speechless. Only Elfman, who was paralyzed in front of the cracked rock, raised his hand weakly. "But sister, fighting force is what a man is." Mira immediately glared at Elfman, causing Elfman to shudder and shut his mouth. Seeing this scene, Noah couldn't help but laugh out loud. This laughter was immediately heard by Mira, Lisanna, and Elfman. Seeing Noah floating in the air, unable to hold back his laughter, the siblings were first startled before they were pleasantly surprised. Chapter 1638. Big Brother Noah. Lisanna cheered, jumped up and pounced on Noah. Noah hurriedly stepped forward, stretched out his hand, and pulled Lisanna into his arms. He immediately hugged her warm and fragrant body. "Noah, you're finally back." Elfman shouted at Noah. "That's great. Now that's a real man." The indifference on Mira's pretty face eased up a lot. Then her whole body flashed with a light, and the acceptance of Satan's soul was removed. She returned to her usual appearance. However, She was no longer wearing a princess dress that accentuated her gentle temperament. Instead, she was wearing a simple shirt and shorts. It was obvious that she was wearing this for the sake of the special training. Not only that, her soft white hair was tied into a ponytail with a hairband. Her bangs hung freely on her forehead and moved with the wind. Looking at Mira like this, Noah smiled with nostalgia. It's been a long time since I've seen you like this. It's just like when you were young. When she was young, Mira also liked to tie her hair into a single ponytail. However, back then, she dressed like a delinquent girl and exuded the aura of a delinquent girl. Now Mira's every move revealed her gentleness. Even the smile on her face was rather sweet and was no longer as bad as when she was young. Under such circumstances, Mira tilted her head and said with a smile, "But you're still the same as before. You haven't changed at all." "That's not it. I've changed too." Noah shrugged and pushed Lys-Anna away a little, pinching her little nose. "At least when I was young I didn't know that liking the two of you was such a blissful thing." Hee hee. Lys-Anna raised her head proudly and puffed out her chest. However, she was all smiles. "Now you're regretting not liking me and big sister Mira earlier, aren't you?" Mira seemed to be reminded by Noah's words and couldn't help but chuckle. "Back then you didn't even realize how Lys-Anna and I felt. You made us feel so tired." Noah laughed dryly. When he was young, Noah was indeed a little brat who didn't know anything about love. Naturally, he couldn't understand the feelings of Mira and Lys-Anna. On the other hand, Mira and Lys-Anna had liked Noah since they were young, so it was inevitable that they would feel bitter because of the slow Noah. Well, let's not talk about the dark history of that time. In short, although it was a little embarrassing, it was still a good memory. Noah, who was carrying Lys-Anna with one hand, extended his other hand to Mira. "Come here, let me hug you." Mira obediently stepped forward and snuggled into Noah's embrace. She felt Noah's warmth with a serene expression on her face. "It's good that you're back." "I'm sorry," Noah said softly as he hugged his two fiancés tightly. "Sorry for making you worry." "I'm really worried," said Lys-Anna, who was also leaning against Noah. She seemed to be complaining. "When I woke up on Celestial Wolf Island and didn't see Big Brother Noah, I thought that something had happened to Big Brother Noah when you were fighting a Conarolia. I almost cried." "A Conarolia?" Noah narrowed his eyes, a cold glint flashing in his deep dark eyes. "That lizard does have some skills, but it's still far from being able to do anything to me. If there's a chance, I'll definitely make it pay for what happened that day." As expected of Noah, Elfman couldn't help but exclaim, "You're a real man." Mira and Lys-Anna nodded as well. "Collect a debt from the Black Dragon who destroyed a country in Revelation?" If these words were heard by others, they would definitely snort disdainfully. However, Mira and Lys-Anna trusted Noah unconditionally. Therefore, Mira and Lys-Anna didn't have any doubts about Noah's words. Not to mention, the battle between Noah and Aconarolia was also witnessed by the main members of the Celestial Wolf group. Although the result was left undecided, the battle between Noah and Aconarolia wasn't one-sided. Not only that, Noah also forced Aconarolia into desperate straits several times, displaying extremely powerful strength. Mira and Lys-Anna both believed that even if his opponent was the Black Dragon that destroyed a country, Noah wouldn't lose. After a heartwarming reunion, Noah, Mira, and Lys-Anna parted ways. "Are there only the three of you here?" Noah's gaze swept across the Strauss siblings. "Where are the rest?" Naz, Gray, Alusha, Lucy, Wendy, Lebby, Hubby, Summer, Lulu, Jet, and Troy went to the beach. Lys-Anna replied obediently. Laxus, Fred, Bikeslow, and Abagrin went to another city. Gajil, Jubia, Kana, and Lily went to the mountain like us, but I don't know which mountain they went to. Elfman made a pose as if he was flexing his muscles. Uncle left not long after returning to the guild and continued to travel. The rest of our companions also went to other places to train. Mira clapped her hands as if she had thought of something. "By the way, Noah, you still don't know, right? Kana and Kildas are actually father and daughter?" "Huh." Noah made a sound that was a little off topic as he spoke in astonishment. "What did you say?" "Kana and Kildas are father and daughter, this is true." Lys-Anna continued Myra's words. "It is said that Kana came to the guild to find her biological father and then joined our guild, but she never had the chance to acknowledge Kildas. We were also shocked when we found out. According to her, it seems that she felt that Kildas was too high to reach, and she never had the chance to acknowledge him, so she dragged it out until now. Elfman folded his arms as he spoke logically. Originally, it seemed that if he succeeded in the S-level magic shooter promotion exam and became an S-level magic shooter, he would acknowledge Kildas as his father. That's not straightforward at all. Not like a man at all. Kana is not a man, she is a girl. Mira seemed to kindly remind him. Girls have a lot of difficulties, you can't laugh at them like that. She will acknowledge him after becoming an S-rank archmage? Noah rubbed his forehead. I see, no wonder Kana was so obsessed with becoming an S-rank archmage during the exam, and her behavior was so strange before the exam began. Although the process was tortuous, she still acknowledged him in the end. Lisanna puffed up her cheeks. Undoubtedly, we are all family. Wouldn't it be better to acknowledge him directly? Didn't Mira also say that girls have a lot of difficulties? Noah laughed. Moreover, do you think that all family members in the world are like you three siblings and have such a good relationship? No matter what, this is a good thing, Mira said regretfully. It's a pity that Kildas immediately left the guild to travel, and doesn't know about the Great Demon Battle exhibition. Otherwise, our chances of winning would be much higher. Don't worry, sister. Sister. Elfman patted his chest. Even if there is no uncle, you still have a man. Brother Elfman and I couldn't beat Mira even when we joined forces, and he still wants to replace Kildas. What a fool. Lisanna hugged Noah's arm, her face full of joy. However, now that Brother Noah is back, our chances of winning have increased. Yes. Mira nodded, looking at Noah with a gentle gaze that could soften one's heart. Noah will definitely make us the number one in the Fiori Kingdom again. Is that so? Noah spread out his hands. Makao and Wakaba both believe that even if it was me, I wouldn't be able to do anything if I had a 7-year gap. Those two fools don't know how powerful Brother Noah is. Lisanna shook Noah's arm and said expectantly. Moreover, since Brother Noah is here, why don't you train here with us? Fool. Noah pinched Lisanna's little nose again. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have come all the way here. Noah's words made Mira and Lisanna laugh happily. Noah is also here to train? Elfman grinned. That's a real man. Everyone burst into laughter at once. Chapter 1639. Not long after, the cool night fell. On the top of a mountain not far from Magnolia, a small camp was set up. The bonfire was burning slowly, illuminating the few tents that were set up at the side. In the night sky, the round moon shone with a bright and enchanting light. Together with the bonfire, it illuminated the entire mountaintop. And in one of the tents beside the bonfire, under the thin blanket, 3 figures were entangled with each other. This entanglement lasted until late into the night. It was only when the moon began to set that the undulating blanket gradually stopped. Noah hugged his 2 charming fiancées on his left and right, his heart filled with peace. Mira and Lisanna seemed to have lost all their strength from the torment. Their naked bodies were covered in sweat as they lay obediently in Noah's arms, gasping for breath. Their bodies couldn't move at all. Undoubtedly, Mira and Lisanna couldn't help but feel tired after going through so much training during the day, and being tormented by their sweetheart at night. However, compared to exhaustion, the 2 delicate fiancés were more satisfied. Noah lowered his head and looked at Mila and Lisanna, who were lying on his left and right. Their exquisite and beautiful faces were flushed with intoxication. He reached out and stroked his 2 fiancés' heads. If you're tired, then hurry up and rest. Mira and Lisanna were still adjusting their breathing, but they shook their heads at the same time. Hey, big brother Noah. Lisanna wrapped her fair arms around Noah's neck as she snuggled up to Noah. Is there something on your mind? Noah, who was caressing Mira and Lisanna's heads, paused for a moment, but he recovered soon after. After a moment of silence, Noah spoke softly. Why do you say that? The one who answered wasn't Lisanna but Mira. Because. Mira looked straight into Noah's eyes as if she was trying to see through Noah's heart. Today, instead of saying that you love us, it's more like you're acting spoiled towards us. Act coquettishly. Noah was dumbfounded. What kind of description is that? Big brother Noah. It's not realistic to continue hiding it. Lisanna's face was pressed against Noah's chest. I've already told you. Even if something happens to you, don't think you can hide it from the person sleeping next to you. Indeed, Lisanna had said the same thing many times, and Noah had also experienced it many times. Although it sounded like a sentence without any basis, for some reason this sentence was unusually persuasive. At the very least, it wasn't the first time Noah realized that his feelings were easily discovered by Mira and Lisanna. I really can't hide anything from you guys. Noah was helpless, but he continued to stroke Mira and Lisanna's heads lovingly. After hesitating for a moment, he sighed. It doesn't seem right to say that there's something on my mind. I just feel that a lot has happened today, and I'm a little tired. Tired. He was indeed tired. Not to mention the matter of the fairy tale and the fairy heart, just the things that he encountered and learned in the space between worlds were enough to make Noah feel tired. That was to be expected, wasn't it? If one day someone suddenly told you that you had no parents, and that you weren't even born in your mother's womb, but an existence that was created, would you be able to accept such a thing at the first moment? Of course not, right? However, Noah accepted it. This was because Noah had long had a premonition that his existence was definitely not simple. If one day, someone told you that if you didn't stand up and fight against a terrifying enemy that had the power to destroy thousands of worlds, then not only you, but also your family, friends, lovers, and all the worlds that your companions existed in would be wiped out. Would you be able to make the decision to fight immediately? Of course not, right? However, Noah managed to do it. Because if even Noah didn't fight, then who else could? Moreover, Noah only wanted to rely on his own hands to protect the important people. So Noah calmly accepted it all. If it was a normal person facing all this, they would probably be in a mess right now, right? However, Noah didn't. When he was young, in order to control his own emotions and prevent them from causing his mana to go berserk and harm his friends, Noah had no choice but to strengthen his state of mind. In the world of the Black Bullet, in order to protect the unfortunate children, in order to survive in the chaotic situation, Noah used 1.5 years to stand out in the darkness of people's hearts. At this moment, the experience of the past had turned into the strongest will, allowing Noah to accept all this and bravely face it. However, that didn't mean that Noah wasn't tired. After shouldering so many heavy responsibilities, it would be strange if he wasn't tired. This kind of tiredness, after coming in front of Mira and Lisanna, could no longer be hidden. In front of his two beloved future partners, Noah unconsciously showed his tiredness. That was why Mira said that Noah was acting spoiled. However, to be more precise, it should be said that Noah was comforted by Mira and Lisanna. Mira and Lisanna seemed to be able to vaguely sense something and hugged Noah tightly, hoping to comfort Noah's heart. Leaning against Noah's chest and listening to Noah's heartbeat, Mira said softly, "If you're tired, then take a proper rest." Yes. Lisanna also couldn't help but agree. If it's Big Brother Noah, I believe that no matter what happens, he'll be able to solve it easily. The two girls were very considerate and didn't ask Noah about the things he was hiding in his heart. Since Noah didn't say anything, it meant that either it was something unimportant, or it was something that Noah had to solve alone. Although Mira and Lisanna felt sorry for Noah and wanted to help Noah, they couldn't help it. Just like how Mira and Lisanna could clearly sense Noah's thoughts, Noah naturally understood what his two fiancés were thinking. "All right, don't think too much," Noah said firmly as he hugged his two fiancés tightly. "Even if it's just for the two of you, I won't compromise with anyone." As he spoke, Noah stared at the top of the tent. His dark and deep eyes glowed with an unprecedented brilliance. Even if it's an existence that can destroy the world. Upon hearing Noah's words, Mira and Lisanna's hearts calmed down. "I know that you must have something very important to do." Mira looked up at Noah and revealed an extremely gentle smile. "I just hope that you can remember that no matter what happens, there are people here waiting for you to come back." Big Sister Mira is right. No matter what happens, we will wait for Big Brother Noah to come back. Lisanna nodded firmly. "So, Big Brother Noah, no matter what happens, you must remember to come back. Okay?" "Of course." Noah couldn't help but kiss his two fiancés' foreheads. "I can't bear to give up on my two delicate fiancés." Fiancés. Mira didn't resist Noah's intimacy and only murmured longingly, "I wonder when I can become your real wife." Upon hearing that, Noah was stunned on the spot and fell into deep thought. Lisanna said with a hint of longing in her voice, "Come to think of it, in this era we were already engaged 7 years ago. In the end, we haven't gotten married for 7 whole years." Looking at Mira and Lisana's longing expression, Noah couldn't help but recall Gaia and Alea's words. Don't leave behind any regrets? Noah mumbled and finally made up his mind. That's right. It's time for us to get married. This time it was Mira and Lisana's turn to be stunned. Under such circumstances, Noah suddenly smiled. After the Great Demon Battle exhibition competition, let's get married. The two sisters widened their eyes at the same time. Then they smiled happily. Chapter 1640. The next morning. What? In front of the already extinguished bonfire, Elfman let out a loud cry filled with shock. We're getting married. Just as he shouted in shock, Elfman's head was viciously slapped, causing him to scream in pain. Why are you being so loud? Noah retracted his hand and glared at Elfman. Your sister and sister are still sleeping. Keep it down. Elfman immediately shut his mouth obediently with a resentful look on his face. Don't look at how big Elfman is. He is very afraid of Mira and Lisana. Especially Mira. When Mira was really angry, Elfman didn't even dare to take a deep breath. Noah, who knew Elfman's personality well, smirked. By the way, is it surprising that we've decided to get married? After hearing Noah's words, Elfman felt that he was making a fuss out of nothing. After all, Noah and the Strauss sisters were engaged. Since that was the case, it wouldn't be strange for them to get married at any time, right? Or rather, in the eyes of outsiders, Noah, Mira, and Lisana were already engaged 7 years ago, and they were only planning to get married 7 years later. That was already very slow. Of course, to the core members of the guild who were frozen on Celestial Wolf Island, Noah, Mira, and Lisana's engagement was only half a year ago. Even so, if there were no accidents, it would be time for them to get married in half a year. After all, Noah, Mira, and Lisana were already adults, weren't they? Is that so? Are my sister and Lisana finally going to get married? Elfman scratched his head. Although I knew that such a day would come, when I think of being the only one at home in the future, even a man would feel lonely. After marrying Noah, Mira and Lisana naturally wouldn't live with Elfman anymore. Ever since we were young, the three of us have never been apart. Elfman said emotionally. Now sister and sister are both gone. I don't know when I'll get used to it. I'm sorry, Elfman. Noah smiled bitterly. I can only say that no matter what, I will make Mira and Lisana happy. That's enough. Elfman wasn't a wishy-washy person. After patting his cheeks, he pulled himself together. When do you plan to marry my sister and Lisana? Wait until the Great Demonic Combat Arts exhibition competition is over. Noah smiled. First of all, I need to make Fairy Tale the #1 guild in the Kingdom of Fiori. Only then can I hold the grandest wedding and let those two sisters marry into my family. Oh, as expected of Noah, you're a real man. Elfman said with admiration. Oh right, how are you going to solve the housing problem? You can't let sister and Lisana live in the guild with you, right? That's true. Noah stroked his chin. It seems that before marrying Mira and Lisana, I have to think about the housing problem. Do you need help? Elfman immediately asked. If you need money, I should be able to help. If I have to rely on my brother-in-law to pay for my new house, won't I be despised to death? Noah rejected without hesitation. So there's no need. But are you okay? Elfman reminded. Although it's a little unmanly to say this, Noah, you must have squandered all your wealth for the guild, right? Indeed, Noah had already squandered all of the money he had in this world. He had exchanged it for magic crystals to help Fairy Tale survive the most difficult period of her life. In addition, Noah's treasure vault was left in the world space, so it could be said that he was now penniless. It was because of this that Elfman offered to help, right? Now that you mention it, this is indeed a problem. Noah frowned. Also, holding a wedding is not a small expense. Seems that I have to think about the money. So you still need my help, right? Elfman patted his chest. Although I don't have much savings, I should be able to help a lot. After all, I'm a man. Holding a wedding and buying a house? Where did you get so much money? Noah couldn't help but laugh. Moreover, I don't want to just hold an ordinary wedding, and I don't want Mira and Lisana to live in a cheap house. If we really have to spend money with your little savings, it's probably useless even if you have 10 times more. As a man, I really want to refute you, but I have to say that you're telling the truth. Elfman was speechless. Then he seemed to have thought of something and shouted. Right. I almost forgot. If we get first place in the Great Demonic Combat Arts Competition, I think there's a prize of 30 million J. 30 million J. Noah was surprised. There's such a thing? What? Elfman asked curiously. Didn't the president tell you about this? No. Noah was speechless and his heart skipped a beat. Grandfather wants us to participate in the Great Demonic Combat Arts Competition. It can't be because of the 30 million J, right? How is that possible? Elfman shook his head and denied it. The president is such a man. He definitely won't compromise for a little money. Elfman's words could not be said to be wrong. However, for some reason, Noah felt that Makarov had decided to participate in the Great Demonic Combat Arts Competition because of the 30 million J. As for getting the title of the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom, that was just a side benefit, right? After all, sometimes Grandpa can also be very immoral and have no limits. Elfman looked curiously at Noah, who was muttering to himself. What are you talking about? Nothing. Noah laughed and spread his hands, returning to the topic at hand. However, even if there's a 30 million J prize, that money should be used to revive the guild. How can it be used by me alone? Today, Fairy Tale was no longer the same as before. It wasn't the #1 guild in the Kingdom of Fiori, and it didn't have many members. Even the commissions they had were few and far between. It was impossible for them to support the activities of a guild. Therefore, the Great Demonic Combat Arts Competition's prize money was a timely reign for Fairy Tale. If they could reclaim the title of the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom and obtain the 30 million J prize money, then it wouldn't take long for Fairy Tale to return to its heyday, right? As the next guild leader, Noah would never use that sum of money to buy a new house and hold a wedding for himself. Well, a problem that can be solved with money is not a real problem. Noah patted Elfman's shoulder. As long as the guild returns to its previous state, do you have to worry about not having enough money to complete the most difficult commissions? That's true with your ability. You can complete any commission no matter how difficult it is. If you want to earn money, this is enough. Elfman scratched his head. If that's the case, then I won't worry too much. However, if there's anything you need my help with, don't hesitate to ask. This is my sister's wedding and happiness. I should help when necessary. That's what a real man is. All right. Noah nodded quickly. If necessary, I won't hesitate. As they spoke, Mira and Lisanna came out of the tent at the same time. Sorry, Brother Noah, Brother Elfman. Lisanna yawned cutely. I woke up late. Sorry to keep you waiting. Mira smiled apologetically. I'll start cooking now. After dinner, we'll start today's training. Oh, Elfman replied loudly. That's what a real man is. Brother Elfman, don't shout so loudly, Lisanna said with some dissatisfaction. You're making my ears hurt. Seeing the Strauss siblings getting along well, Noah smiled knowingly. Just like that, the family's training began again. Chapter 1641. Just as Noah and his group began their 2-month training in various parts of the Fiori Kingdom, the return of the main members of the Fairy Tale Guild, who was once the #1 guild in the kingdom, and the fact that they were preparing to participate in the annual Great Magic Battle Show was also known to everyone. Compared to the past, although the current Fairy Tale was not as famous as before, there were still many people paying attention to this guild. For example, the council, ever since the return of the main members of Fairy Tale, had been paying attention to the guild's movements. Not for other reasons, but because the members of the council thought that since the main members of the guild who were the most troublemakers had returned, they naturally had to keep an eye on them and not let this guild cause any more trouble. In addition to the council, many other famous guilds were also paying attention to Fairy Tale. For example, the Blue Pegasus. For example, the Lamia Scale. These two guilds clearly knew how incredible this magic guide guild named Fairy Tale was. In the case of the return of the main members, the others did not think much of this matter. Only Blue Pegasus and Lamia Scales, the guilds that had been in close contact with Fairy Tale, had been paying attention to their movements. Therefore, after knowing that Fairy Tale was preparing to participate in the Great Magic Battle Show, the members of these two guilds also began to look forward to it and prepared to put in the highest level of combat power. In addition to the guilds that had close contact with Fairy Tale, There was another guild that had been paying attention to the movements of fairy tale. No, there was something slightly wrong with this statement. To be precise, it should be said that the members of this guild had been paying attention to the movements of some people in fairy tale. Saber-tooth. 7 years ago, it was just a small guild with no reputation. A few years ago, after changing the guild leader and bringing in 5 powerful magic shooters, it stood out from the many other guilds in the Fiori Kingdom and became the #1 guild in the kingdom. Now, in the headquarters of this guild, the 5 powerful magic shooters who changed the entire guild were all gathered in a room. It was a discussion room in the guild headquarters. In the discussion room, 4 people had already arrived. One of them had a head of short blonde hair and was sitting on the sofa. He was about 20 years old. The other was standing behind the sofa, like a shadow in the dark corner. He was about the same age as the former. The other was wearing a gentleman's hat and a masquerade on his face. He had long blonde hair and was leaning against the wall of the discussion room. The other was a burly man with muscles all over his body. He wore a tiger-skin skirt and had tattoos on both his left and right arms. He looked like the leader of a gang. 4 of the 5 powerful sorcerers who had transformed the saber-tooth stood there quietly, waiting for the arrival of the last person. They didn't have to wait too long before the last person slowly appeared. Sorry to keep you waiting. The person who entered the discussion room was a very slim girl with waist-length black hair. Her bangs were parted in the middle, and her hair was tied into a bun on both sides. Her eyelashes were long and slender. She was wearing a woman's off-the-shoulder dress similar to a cheongsam. Looking at the girl, the man sitting on the sofa with the posture of a playboy opened his eyes, looked over and grinned. "You're finally here, Mississippi." "It took a little bit of time, Christine," the girl replied with a dignified etiquette, but it gave people a feeling of arrogance. Then her eyes swept over the shadow-like man, the blonde gentleman, and the muscular man. "Roger, Lucifer, and Olga, sorry to keep you waiting." "It doesn't matter," the shadow-like man called Roger said very coldly. "I just hope it's not something boring. It's only 22 minutes and 47 seconds. It's not that long." The blonde gentleman called Lucifer pressed on his hat and spoke with assurance like an elegant knight. "At least that's what my memory says. What's the matter that requires the 4 of us to be gathered? Miss Maniba?" The burly man known as Olga crossed his arms and glanced at the young girl in the cheongsam-like dress. "There shouldn't be a mission that requires the 5 of us to move together, right? If there is such a mission, I want to try," the man called Christine said in an unruly manner. "I thought the annihilation mission I received last time would be difficult. Just in case, I even asked Roger to go with me. In the end, those dark guild scum were simply too weak. It was so boring. This time, it's not a boring matter." The girl called Miss Maniba by Oluya smiled sweetly. "I'm here to tell you that we've already chosen the 5th member to participate in the Great Demon Combat Arts exhibition. In other words, Miss is determined not to participate." Christine spread out his hands. "Well, it's fine. Anyway, it's enough to have Roger and me. With Lucifer and Olga, with the 4 of us, the first place is within reach. Although that's the case, if the contestant isn't qualified, it will affect the reputation of our guild." A flirtatious smile appeared on Maniba's face. "So, for the time being, Father and I have chosen a qualified contestant." As soon as she finished speaking, the door of the meeting room was opened. From outside the meeting room, a person slowly walked in with strong and forceful steps. It was a girl. She was a girl who was younger than anyone else present. She was only around 17 or 18 years old. The girl had short white hair and wore a tight white dress. She wore a pair of snow boots and a coat that looked like a winter coat. She looked very high-end and beautiful. And the girl did indeed have an admirable beauty. Although her slender and plump body was hidden under a wide and thick robe, one could still see a trace of good figure. However, such a high-end and beautiful girl's cute and delicate face was tense and expressionless. However, the young girl's eyes revealed a kind of persistence, a kind of willpower. Looking at the girl, the group of people in the meeting room were stunned. "Xuanai," Christine said with some surprise. "The person who plans to participate in the Great Demon Combat Arts exhibition with us is Xuanai?" Roger also glanced at the high-end and beautiful girl, then looked away as if he had lost interest. He was extremely cold. As for Lucifer and Olga, they looked at each other. What a rare thing. Xuanai actually plans to participate in the Great Demon Combat Arts exhibition. Lucifer smiled elegantly. In my memory, Xuanai rarely takes the initiative to show herself, right? The girl named Xuanai was silent for a moment. In the next second, with an extremely determined expression, she said such a sentence. Because, in this Great Demon Combat Arts exhibition, there is a person that I hope to fight with. Is that so? Christine laughed out loud. So Xuanai, you also have an opponent that you want to fight? Isn't that the same as me and Roger? In order to participate in the competition, Xuanai defeated all the members except for the 5 of us in the internal competition of the guild. McNeba said leisurely. So this time let Xuanai participate in the competition with you. Everyone nodded indifferently. Seeing this, Xuanai lowered her head and her eyes flickered. I hope to see you again. Lord Noah. Chapter 1642. Today the sun was shining brightly. On the top of a mountain not far from Magnolia, Noah stood quietly on the edge of the cliff with his eyes closed. His mind was slowly becoming peaceful. Clang! Suddenly, without any warning, Noah's body flashed with flame-like light and turned into a layer of light film, shrouding the outline of his body. Hum! The air trembled slightly. With the trembling sound, the blue flame-like light shrouding the outline of Noah's body began to shine brighter and brighter, causing the magic power to rise steadily and burn constantly, setting off waves of atmospheric fluctuations. Under such circumstances, the ground where Noah stood began to tremble slightly. Some of the gravel scattered there even vibrated, stirring up a series of pa-pa sounds. That was not the end. As if unaware of the changes in the surroundings, the magic power on Noah's body became more and more intense, causing the surrounding abnormal phenomena to become more intense and intense. It didn't take long for the demonic flames that rose from Noah's body to turn into a beam of light that soared into the sky. It set off violent waves and shockwaves, causing the ground to tremble repeatedly. It was extremely terrifying. In the next second, the magic power beam that soared into the sky trembled and suddenly turned from blue to golden. At this moment, all the magic power rising from Noah's body turned into divine power. Moreover, the entire transformation process took less than a second. Then, at a certain moment, the golden divine power suddenly turned into phosphorescent energy. That was the energy of divine power. With his eyes closed, Noah was constantly transforming the nature of the energy in his body. Sometimes it was magic power. Sometimes it was divine power. Sometimes it was divine power. Sometimes Noah would even transform the endless energy into pure mental strength, allowing his 5 senses to become extremely clear. In this way, Noah skillfully transformed the nature of various energies, allowing magic power, divine power, and mental strength to continuously transform each other and become more and more familiar with each other. And Noah's actions caused the energy beam that soared from his body to constantly change color, causing the waves and shockwaves to become more and more intense. In the distance, Mira, Lisanna, and Elfman, who had just finished their training, wiped their sweat while looking at the energy beam that soared into the sky. Their eyes could not help but be filled with deep amazement. Although I've been watching Noah train like this for 2 whole months, I'm still very surprised every time I see it. Myra's delicate and beautiful face was full of solemnity. Generally speaking, even archmages like Kildas and Laxas would use up all their magic power in just a few minutes and take a few days to recover. But Noah is not in this situation at all. That's right. Lisanna stared in Noah's direction with shock and amazement in her eyes. In the past 2 months, Brother Noah has been squandering his magic power like this almost every day. But I've never seen him use up all his magic power, nor did I see him need time to recover. It's as if he has endless magic power. But that's impossible, isn't it? Elfman said seriously. There's no such thing as unlimited magic power in this world. Even Noah can't do that. He's not a man. Although there were parts of Elfman's words that needed to be ridiculed, it had to be said that no matter who it was, they would all come to the same conclusion. If the so-called unlimited magic power really existed, it would have caused a sensation in the world of magic. After all, when Edras, who was connected to Aslan, lost his magic power, it was as if the world had come to an end. In order to obtain magic power, Edras did not hesitate to use space magic to turn Aslan's archmages into magic crystals. Unlimited magic power? That was something that only existed in dreams. If such a thing really existed, the world of magic would have been shaken. Magic had existed a long time ago, but there had never been such a thing as unlimited magic power, and now it was even more impossible for there to be such a thing. That was what Mira, Lysanna, and Elfman were thinking. Even Mira and Lysanna, who thought highly of Noah, did not think that Noah could use unlimited magic power. It was precisely because this matter was so unbelievable that Makarov tried his best to hide the existence of lumen starlight and treated it seriously. If such a thing were to be known by the world, it would definitely cause a huge commotion and impact. But sister, Noah is indeed releasing a large amount of magic power now, right? Elfman suddenly asked doubtfully. I've been thinking about it before. Sometimes Noah doesn't seem to be releasing magic power but something else, right? After hearing Elfman's words, Mira and Lysanna looked at each other. Clearly, the two sisters also had the same doubts. Sometimes Noah didn't use magic power. How could this matter be hidden from the Strauss siblings? After all, Noah had been cultivating like this for the past 2 months without hiding at all. Mira and the others naturally noticed. But if it's not magic power, what else could it be? Lysanna asked. Could it be that there is some other mysterious power that we don't know about apart from magic power? Maybe. Mira shook her head and looked at Noah, who was surrounded by a huge pillar of energy that shot into the sky, with a gentle smile. No matter what kind of power it is, as long as it is beneficial to Noah, isn't that enough? Lysanna and Elfman nodded in agreement. In fact, as long as Mira, Lysanna, and Elfman asked Noah about it, Noah definitely wouldn't mind telling them his secret. However, the Strauss siblings didn't have any intention of getting to the bottom of it. They had always thought that no matter what, as long as it was beneficial to Noah, everything else wasn't important. That was why the Strauss siblings didn't ask anything. And since they didn't ask, Noah had no reason to explain himself. This was a situation that could only be created by the most extreme trust. Without a doubt, Noah trusted Mira, Lysanna, and Elfman from the bottom of his heart. The 3 siblings also trusted Noah from the bottom of their hearts. Otherwise, Noah wouldn't have trained his control of energy so brazenly in front of the family. After an unknown amount of time had passed, the phenomenon of the earthquake began to slowly subside. The waves and shockwaves that swept through the surroundings like a storm also began to disappear. The pillar of energy that shot into the sky descended bit by bit. After a while, it shrunk back into Noah's body, allowing Noah's robes to calm down. Only then did Noah open his eyes, a trace of satisfaction appearing in them. In 2 months, my control of energy has finally increased by a few levels. Now, Noah no longer had a problem with energy consumption. Thus, the amount of energy he could control directly affected the power Noah could unleash when he used it. With my current control of energy, no matter what kind of mystic I use, it should be enough to unleash its greatest power, right? Noah had already felt this a month ago. That was because a month ago, Noah was already able to unleash the greatest power of the magic and spells he had learned. I thought that as long as I continue to increase my control of energy, the power of magic and spells will continue to increase. It's a pity that there's a limit to the magic and spells I've learned. Noah calculated silently. For example, no matter how much mana I inject into the magic, it won't be able to increase the degree of enhancement. However, Noah should be content with what he had. No matter what, if I use enhancement to strengthen my body now, I'll almost have the physical strength of a god. In other words, Noah could reach 5 digits just by relying on strengthening magic alone. And it would be at the top. Today is the end of my cultivation. Noah raised his head and looked in Magnolia's direction. Time to go back. Chapter 1643. Fiori Kingdom, Magnolia. On the street outside the Fairy Tale Guild, a few people were staggering towards the entrance of the guild. When they reached the entrance of the guild, they all fell to the ground. I'm back. Naz was lying on the ground looking listless. Finally back. Not only Naz but also Gray, Lucy, Wendy, Hubby, Xiaolulu, and even Lebby, who were walking with him, looked extremely tired. They were either sitting or lying on the ground, looking like they had been forced to do hard labor for a few days. They were so exhausted that even moving was difficult. Among the people present, there was only one person who could still maintain a good condition. This is too much, you guys. Alusha put her hands on her hips and lectured them seriously. There's a very important competition waiting for us. If the president sees your disappointing performances, he might exclude you from the team. At that time, you'll be the ones to regret it. The annual festival that determined the ranking of all the guilds in the Fiori Kingdom. The Great Magic Battle Exhibition. As the name suggested, it was a competition that only the Magic Guide Guild that belonged to the Fiori Kingdom could participate. The participants were not only the elites of the major guilds in the Fiori Kingdom, but there were also some special people who had strange magic. It could be said that it was a fierce competition. Just by imagining it, one could imagine how fierce the competition would be. Of course, although it was a competition between the major guilds in the Fiori Kingdom, it was impossible for all the members of the guild to participate. Although the rules were different every year, and even the content of the competition was different, there was one thing that every Great Magic Battle Exhibition had in common. That was, every participant had to be a team of 5 members from the same guild. In other words, if Fairy Tail wanted to participate in the Great Magic Battle Exhibition, they had to choose at least 5 members to form a group. Otherwise, they would not even be qualified to sign up. After this period of training, Naz and the others had undoubtedly improved their strength. However, this was definitely the same for everyone else. If Nazi and the others continued to maintain this listless and exhausted appearance, it was not impossible for them to be excluded from the participation quota. That definitely won't do. Naz immediately braced himself and struggled to get up from the ground. I will definitely participate in the Great Demon Battle Exhibition exercise. Me too. Gray struggled to get up as well. If I can't even participate in the competition, then there's no point in becoming like this. That being said, but looking at Naz and Gray's swaying appearance, it was probably really hard for them, right? However, it's already very good to be able to stand up. Lucy moaned weakly. It's hard for me to even move now. As expected of Brother Naz and Brother Gray, Wendy smiled weakly as well. The two of you will definitely be able to become members of the competition. That's hard to say. Although Kildas has already gone on a trip and is not in the guild, Laxus and Mira are still in the guild. Gadjaloo and Julian are also strong candidates for the competition. It's not certain if Naz and Gray will be chosen. Rebby was still lying on the ground and glanced at Elusha. Well, Elusa on the other hand will definitely be chosen. Love. Habby raised his hand weakly. After all, it's Elusha. I say, don't forget about Lily. Xiao Lulu forced herself to be alert and flew in the air, snorting softly. Lily is also very strong, but he can't use it freely in Aslan. Perhaps he will also be chosen as the representative of the surpassers in the guild. Indeed. Elusha smiled slightly. There are also many powerful magic shooters in our guild. Let's clearly tell everyone in the Fiori Kingdom during the Great Magic Battle Exhibition. Oh! Everyone immediately raised their hands and responded loudly. The next moment, a somewhat playful laughter entered the ears of the group. It's good to have this ambition, but before that, you have to return to the guild first. If you lie on the streets, you won't be convincing at all. The sudden voice made Elusha and the rest slightly startled. Then, they turned their heads and looked in the direction of the guild's entrance. They saw that in front of the guild's entrance, a group of Fairy Tail members had all appeared out of nowhere and were smiling at Elusha and the rest. The one in the lead was Noah. I knew it. If it's so noisy, it must be you guys who are back. Noah shook his head amusedly. I haven't seen you guys for a few months. Seeing you guys so energetic, I'm relieved. Hearing this, the crowd finally reacted. Noah? Elusha was shocked and surprised. You're back? I came back after you guys left the guild and went out to train. Noah's gaze met Elusha's and shrugged. Speaking of which, you guys didn't really think that I was killed by Aconarolia, right? Of course not. Gray stepped forward and punched Noah's chest fiercely. You brat, you've always been good at doing things that surprise us since you were young. How could a mere dragon kill you? What do you mean a mere dragon? Naz immediately retorted. If it was Iginiru, even Noah would be defeated. Idiot. Lucy sighed. No one is comparing with you. What an idiot. Xiao Lulu said arrogantly. You're not the only one who was raised by a dragon. Love. Habby spread his hands. But this is Naz. While everyone was surprised by Noah's return, Wendy also came to Noah with a happy face. "Brother Noah, welcome back." Looking at the happy Wendy, Noah couldn't help but reach out and touch Wendy's head. "Welcome back too." Wendy suddenly showed a shy and bashful smile, but she didn't reject Noah's intimate action. There was even a hint of comfort in her expression, which made Xia Lulu a little jealous. "You only know how to please that male. But it's great that you're back." Elisha smiled at Noah. "With you, our guild's chances of winning are much higher. After all, you're not the only ones who have cultivation." Noah returned a smile to Elisha. "Although I'm a month late, I still cultivated a little and finally achieved some results." "Oh, is that so?" Naz was eager to try and clenched his fist at Noah. "In that case, we might as well take advantage of the situation to determine the winner. You really don't learn to be obedient." Gray curled his lips. "How can I win against Noah, you idiot?" "Huh." Naz glared at Gray. "Did you just say you played with eggs? Exhibitionist. I'm talking about idiots and masochists." Gray glared back, unwilling to be outdone. "Even your ears don't work well. Just don't participate in the Great Demonic Battle Exhibition, and go home to play with eggs." "You really said you played with eggs, you bastard." Naz. "Who are you calling a bastard? You idiot." Gray. "Shut up. Stop arguing." Elisha. "Love." Gray and Naz. "There they are." Lucy complained habitually. "Hubby 2 and hubby 3. "Really?" Xia Lulu turned her head away. "They're all idiots." Seeing this noisy scene, Noah laughed. The members of Fairy Tale also laughed. "All right, let's all go in," Mira said gently. "The president is ready to announce the list of contestants. You've all come back at the right time." Everyone nodded their heads and walked into the guild while chatting and laughing. In Fairy Tale, Makarov was standing on the stage where he usually performed and made important announcements. He looked down at the audience. "Very good, everyone is here. Now let's announce the list of contestants." Everyone held their breaths. Chapter 1644. First of all, there are 2 pieces of news that I have to tell everyone. While everyone was holding their breaths, Makarov seemed to be deliberately whetting their appetites. He changed the topic and said this. "The first piece of news is related to the Great Demonic Martial Arts Competition, and the second piece of news is related to the future of our guild." Although Makarov looked like he was whetting everyone's appetite, his expression was quite serious. That was natural. No matter which piece of news it was not something that everyone could ignore. "Let me tell everyone the first piece of news." Makarov coughed and said, "In order to participate in this year's Great Demonic Martial Arts Competition and obtain victory, so that our guild can become the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom again, I have carefully studied the official rules of this year's competition, and found that there is no limit to the number of teams that can participate. Therefore, I have decided that this time we will select 2 teams. 2 teams? Everyone was surprised. 2 teams? Noah was slightly startled, but he was not too surprised. "Is this okay, Guild Master?" Elisha raised her hand and asked. In the previous year's Great Demonic Martial Arts Competition, there was no guild that allowed 2 teams to participate at the same time. But it is true that there is no limit this year, Makarov said shamelessly. "So no matter what, we did not break the rules. Isn't that fine?" Everyone was suddenly speechless. However, since there was no limit to the rules, it was not impossible to do so. Since that is the case, why not select a few more teams to participate? Makarov smiled slyly. "If that is the case, won't our chances of winning be higher?" "Forget it." Wakaba poured a bucket of cold water on them. "In the previous years, our guild was at the bottom. This time, although our main members are participating, if we can't get a place after sending so many teams, it would be too embarrassing." Hey, Gray said in annoyance. "You guys are too unconfident in yourselves." "Well, this can't be helped, right?" Lucy sighed. "After all, anyone would feel that using 3 months to catch up with a 7-year gap is too much of a stretch. But don't we still have Laxas, Elisha, and Mira? I don't think that many people will be able to catch up to those 3 and 7 years, Gray said matter-of-factly as he folded his arms in front of him. "Not to mention now that Noah is back with Noah's strength, not to mention the other magic shooters, even the Lamia scale Della might not be able to catch up to Noah in 7 years, right?" That's right. Wendy nodded repeatedly, trying her best to agree. If it's Big Brother Noah, he will definitely not lose to anyone. I think so too, Lisanna agreed without hesitation. If it's Big Brother Noah, then even if someone has 7 years to chase after him, I don't know if anyone can catch up to him. I think so too. Mira smiled sweetly. No matter what, Noah won't lose. Although the other members who had personally witnessed Noah's strength in the battle against Akenorlia didn't express any opinions, it was clear that they had the same thoughts. Only Makao Wakaba and the other members who had been in the guild for the past 7 years expressed their opinions. They had never seen Noah display such strength before. Naive. You're really too naive. Makao shook his head. You don't know, but Della is no longer the weakest of the 10 great magisters from 7 years ago. That's right, Wakaba agreed. In these 7 years, Della has become the 5th great magisters of the 10 great magisters. His ranking is even higher than the chairman's. 5th place. Lucy was surprised. Doesn't that mean that in this continent, only the top 4 great magisters of the 10 great magisters are stronger than Sir Della? The 10 great magisters are only the 10 most outstanding magisters on the continent. There are definitely magisters who have the strength to become one of the 10 great magisters, but they can't because of their style, Alusha said solemnly. However, since he's ranked 5th, it means that Della might be stronger than the chairman. Everyone immediately fell silent. Didn't that mean that this time, Fairy Tale would be facing an existence even stronger than Makarov, who was one of the 10 great Saint Magi? That kind of thing doesn't matter at all. Naz suddenly stood on a table and grinned. No matter who the opponent is, if they want to stop us from becoming the number 1 magisters in the Fiori Kingdom, we'll just send them flying. That one sentence swept away the heaviness in everyone's hearts. Alright, there's no point in discussing who's stronger and who's weaker. Noah smiled and concluded. We'll only know the result after we fight. Everyone nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Makarov smiled in relief, but then he quickly stopped smiling and said, Don't worry about it. As for the second news, I've decided that after the Great Magisters tournament ends, I'll give up my position as the chairman. Noah will become the 5th chairman of Fairy Tale. This time the entire guild was in an uproar. Congratulations, Noah. Gray patted Noah's shoulder. You're finally going to be the chairman. Congratulations. Congratulations. Remember to treat us when the time comes. The group of friends all gathered around Noah and gave him their blessings one by one. After all, as early as 7 years ago, Noah's position as the chairman had already been decided. They were just waiting for Makarov to step down. Therefore, Makarov's announcement went with the flow and did not cause a huge commotion among the crowd. Looking at his friends around him, Noah suddenly smiled. Then, I'll also announce something to everyone. After saying that, Noah extended his hand and pulled Mira and Lisanna out of the crowd, hugging them in his arms. After the Great Magisters tournament ends, Mira, Lisanna and I will officially get married. After saying this, the entire guild suddenly went silent. Get married. In the next second, cries of surprise resounded throughout the entire space, causing the buildings in the guild to tremble. Is this for real? No. No way. Doesn't that mean that Noah, Mira and Lisanna are really going to get married? Damn it, I'm so envious. The group of friends immediately went into an uproar. And amidst the commotion, Mira and Lisanna's pretty face blushed slightly, but their faces were filled with bliss. Nestling in Noah's arms, they silently confirmed this matter. Wah-wah. Wah-wah-wah-wah-wah. Wendy was flustered and did not know what to do. Something big suddenly happened. Xiao Lulu, on the other hand, was extremely happy. That male finally decided to get married. That's great. This time Wendy can completely give up on him. This is too shocking. Lucy patted her full chest. But, thinking about it carefully, the 3 of them were already engaged 7 years ago. It's natural for them to get married now, right? Get married. Get married. Alusha's face was stiff, and no one knew what she was thinking. Her face turned red and even emitted smoke, as if she had crashed. I'm not mentally prepared yet. That's not right? Gray ridiculed. You're not the one getting married, Alusha. Why are you mentally prepared? Get married? A question mark appeared above Naz's head, and then he said this sentence without thinking. That kind of thing doesn't matter. Hurry up and tell us the name list for the competition. Silence. A deathly silence ensued. Everyone stopped talking for no reason, and then all of them cast a dangerous look at Naz. Naz couldn't help but take a step back. His whole body trembled, and his face was filled with horror. What are you doing? Stinky Flame, you said something that you shouldn't have said. Gray's smile was unprecedentedly bright, and then his expression changed. Beat him up for me. Everyone present rushed towards Naz without any hesitation. Thus, Naz's screams rang out along with the crackling sounds of explosive strikes. Chapter 1645. Pung! Naz, whose face was bruised and swollen, fell heavily to the ground. There were still several large bumps on his head. His eyes rolled around as he groaned half dead. Why? Why? This thick-skinned guy didn't know why he provoked public anger. In the end, it was Lys-Anna who angrily threw down a sentence. Naz, you definitely won't be able to find a bride in the future. At this moment, no one objected to Lys-Anna's words. Everyone nodded and expressed their agreement. Even Habi, who was flying in the air, spread out his hands and said helplessly, "This is Naz." To be able to use such a sentence to explain all the problems, one could imagine how despairing Naz's thick brain had become. Therefore, even Makarov, who was about to announce the official matters, turned a blind eye to the scene of everyone scolding Naz. When it was over, he cracked open his mouth and laughed. This way, if we win the Great Demon Battle Exhibition and become the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom, then it will be 3 consecutive good things. The first good thing was that Noah became the leader of Fairy Tale. The second good thing was that Noah, Mira, and Lys-Anna officially got married. The third good thing was that Fairy Tale became the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom. If this wasn't the 3 blessings, then what was? What a pity. Makarov shook his head regretfully. If I could have a great-grandson, then it would be even more perfect. His words caused Mira and Lys-Anna's faces to turn red. Everyone else also looked at Noah with ridicule in their eyes. Noah's face was full of awkwardness as he quickly changed the topic. So, grandfather, have the members of the 2 teams been decided? That's right. Makarov nodded and began to announce. Then, let's first announce the members of Fairy Tale A team. Makarov extended a hand and pointed to the side. Suddenly, a projection screen flashed next to Makarov. On the screen, the names of 5 people were displayed. Naz Dolagner, Gray Forrestal, Alusha Shukalito, Lucy Hatfilia, Wendy Mabel. The 5 above are the members of Fairy Tale A team. Makarov said. In addition, each team can have a substitute member. That's not urgent, we'll decide who's going to play next. Hearing Makarov's words and looking at the names displayed on the screen, everyone began to talk. That's great. Naz immediately jumped up and revived with full health. Humph. Gray's eyes, his eyes were also filled with excitement. In the end, Fairy Tale A team is our usual team. Alusa smiled leisurely. Only Lucy and Wendy started to panic. It can't be? Let me play. I can't do it. No wonder Lucy and Wendy were so flustered. Originally, 7 years ago, the 2 girls weren't any powerful magic shooters in the guild. Now 7 years have passed. Even if they have been practicing for a while, with Lucy and Wendy's strength, they still don't know if they can keep up with the pace of this era. In that case, instead of letting Lucy and Wendy participate, it would be better to let the members of the guild who have also been here for 7 years participate. This was Lucy and Wendy's idea. Even Noah frowned slightly and spoke with some hesitation. Grandpa, isn't it better to think about it again? It's not that Noah doesn't trust Lucy and Wendy. Not to mention Lucy for the time being, Wendy is still just a child. Even the Dragon Slayer magic shooters in the sky can only use some auxiliary magic. There are not many who can use magic that can be used for combat. Now, although Noah could feel that Wendy's magic power seemed to have improved a lot, and she was almost catching up with Naz and Gray during the S-rank magic shooter promotion exam, magic power was one thing and combat power was another. In the past, Wendy has not experienced many serious battles at all. Letting her play like this, Noah is still somewhat worried. However, not knowing if she saw the worry in Noah's heart, Wendy calmed down and a firm expression appeared on her young and cute face. I understand, I will try my best. Wendy. Noah was surprised. I'm sorry, Brother Noah. I know you will be worried. Wendy clenched her small fists and looked like she was cheering for herself. But I also want to use my actions to tell Brother Noah that I have become stronger. Is that so? Noah muttered to himself. After a while, he touched Wendy's head. Okay, but remember not to force yourself too much. Yes. Wendy nodded her head heavily. Okay. Lucy cheered up at once. Since Wendy has made up her mind, then I have to show my enthusiasm. I will work hard too. Yes, that's right. Elisha immediately agreed. As long as we work together, there will be no problem. Then, let's announce the list of members of Fairy Tale B. Makarov stretched his hand to the other side. These are the 5 members of the B team. After that, another projection screen flashed on the other side of Makarov. On the screen there were 5 names. Noah Dole, Laxus Dole, Malaj Strauss, Gadgera Wright Fox, Julian Rocks. The 5 above are the members of Fairy Tale B. Makarov looked around at everyone below. As for the reserve members of the B team, we will also decide later. Hearing this, everyone turned their gazes and looked at the 5 members of Fairy Tale B. B team? Laxus, who was sitting at the bar, narrowed his eyes slightly. Are they in the same team as Noah? Mira tilted her head and looked satisfied. Are they in the same team as that guy? Gadgeru, who was hiding in the corner, looked in Noah's direction. Julian is in the same team? Julian was more or less surprised. Noah stared at the name list on the screen and nodded silently in his heart. Not to mention himself, whether it was Laxus, Mira, Gadgeru, or Julian, they were all first-class powerhouses in Fairy Tale. Coupled with the members of Fairy Tale, the entire Fairy Tale's strongest group of magic shooters were all listed. With such a lineup, there was no reason why they couldn't stand out in the Great Demonic Combat Arts exhibition. The group of companions was also discussing. Whether it's the A team or B team, they're all quite strong. With such a lineup, they're probably the strongest in our guild, right? However, isn't it better to let 2 of the Raytheons replace Lucy and Wendy's positions? There's also Elfman and Kana. If they join the team, they should have a better chance of winning, right? From the perspective of teamwork, it's better to have Lucy and Wendy in the A team. After all, they're originally a team. Obviously, everyone had their own opinions. But in the end, everyone believed in Makarov's choice. Then the announcement of the members ends here. I'll consider the alternate members of the 2 teams again. Makarov's voice attracted everyone's attention. Tomorrow we have to go to the venue of the Great Demonic Combat Arts exhibition, so today the members of each team must remember to be prepared. Target. 30 million cough cough cough. Before Makarov could finish his sentence, he coughed dryly and spoke in a serious tone. Target. Furious first. Someone cheered loudly in the venue.